Right. Good evening. Good morning if you're in New Zealand. Good afternoon if you're elsewhere. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, whoever else might be listening. This is episode 64 of the Post Concussion Syndrome Awareness podcast. And today I'm very grateful to have Suskya Goodall from New Zealand on with me. This is an audio podcast, and we're going to talk about not just life in New Zealand and everything that goes into well-being in education, psychology, and much more. Hi, Saskia. How are you doing?
Hi. Thank you so much for having me, David. I'm really excited to be here. 6 o'clock in the morning. It's a fun way to start my Friday.
Yeah, it's just after 5 in the evening here, and it's cold and dark. So, yeah, thank you for being generous with your time and agreeing to join us. Would you like to begin by telling the people listening at home, Saskia, a little bit about yourself, your background, and anything about your concussion and your injury, please?
Sure. So my background professionally, I guess, is in education. So I've
Mhm.
had 25 years in education spaces, teaching and leading in primary and secondary education. Um, and then I left to go and start a family. So my boys are now 9 and 11. Oh my goodness, how time has flown.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's incredible, really. Yeah, I've got a really wonderful family and I'm really grateful for them. Um, and yeah, so left teaching yeah, I thought it was going to be temporary.
Right.
Um, then my second came along quite quickly, so I ended up needing some sort of intellectual stimulation while I was at home, and I started my master's. So my master's is in educational psychology and educational leadership. And I got really curious about sort of neurodiverse spaces, which is where I've
Okay.
specialized in health. But then also bringing in that really strong leadership lens and understanding that sort of in terms of trauma and the psych side of things as well.
Oh, okay.
Um, yeah, yeah.
Trauma.
And then yeah, and then someone said, "Oh, do you want to do a PhD?" And I was like, "Oh, why would I do that?" And I don't know, somehow they just got me all excited about it. And I said, yes. So I'm not sure if that anyway, luckily I submitted last week. So it's actually the good 7 years of PhD life is potentially yeah behind me, which is actually quite exciting, a new chapter, so to speak.
Good stuff.
Um yeah, but sort of let's have a think. 2, 3 years into my PhD, I got concussed. So I
Ah,
had um a hit to the head, which was deemed initially mild to medium sort of impact.
right.
Um,
And how did that
but
happen, if you don't mind telling?
honestly, it's the silliest thing ever.
No, it's
Um,
never silly.
it's, no, it's a very silly story, David.
No,
My
it's only dead
4 year old.
serious. Come on, come on, tell us. You don't
All
mind.
right. My 4 year old at the time, who is a fabulously neurodiverse human, was like, "Oh, it's 7 o'clock in the morning. Mum's awake." Very
Oh,
excited.
oh,
And
oh,
he literally
oh.
ran the length of the house and projectiled himself into bed with me for a cuddle. But the front of his head hit me on the side, sort of behind my ear,
Ooh, right,
and
yeah,
I
yeah.
was out.
Out.
Yeah, out to it. Yeah, that was yeah, Gombeggers. Yeah, so um, yeah, it was sort of weird.
Oh, that's
Uh,
not. It's not
Honestly,
silly,
that's
is
all
it?
it was. That's all it was.
Wow, that's a
But
shame.
it's crazy because I feel like from that small little thing, um, like it should have just been, oh, like I remember going to see the doctor on the first day, and it wasn't my doctor, it was whoever was on call.
Mhm.
And
Yeah,
they were
yeah.
like, oh, just lie in the dark for a week and you'll be sorted.
Ah,
That was the eyesight was given. I
Oh
was like, oh,
yeah,
do
yeah,
that week. Yeah, I can do that. Easy, easy.
yeah, yeah.
Not a problem. What I didn't realize is that, first of all, that's a very outdated uh, understanding in the first place in terms of concussion space, but it's also I got concussed. I don't know. I'm getting right into details here. Sorry already.
Oh,
Um,
fine. Well,
I was diagnosed with severe post-concussion syndrome
yeah,
um, um, afterwards, and yet my impact was deemed mild medium. And so it's not
yeah,
like I was in a a a head-on collision with a truck or something extreme like that, like some of my wonderful friends are or have been. And so it took a lot to figure out why my symptoms were severe. So
yeah,
between I had an incredible concussion support team. It took me a lot of advocacy to get that and retain that and develop that. But they helped me get to the bottom of it. And it turns out that um, if a female is concussed within the progesterone half of her cycle, then it acts as a natural brain protectant. And if she is concussed in the estrogen part, there isn't a brain protectant. And so the concussion, post-concussion symptoms will be significantly higher than they otherwise would have been. So
yeah.
it took a long time to try and understand the why of everything, but it's nice to be able to tell you why at this stage. I know there was a good wee while where we had no
Yeah.
clue really why things were so extreme. In the beginning, I couldn't walk or talk, so I
Right,
had
okay.
it was really debilitating. I yeah, like I remember crawling down the hallway to get to the bathroom because I didn't know how to walk. Couldn't figure
Yeah,
out how to do it.
yeah. It can be
Like,
really tough, and the common
mm,
reception that we're all often dealing with is like there's mild traumatic, traumatic, and severe traumatic brain injury. The misconception is that if you're in a car crash and you're like bleeding from the head and your skull's fractured or something, that's going to be far worse. It may essentially lead to a coma or kind of like a hospitalization. Even with traumatic brain injury, that will often lead to a hospitalization. But a mild
mm.
traumatic brain injury from a toddler um, launching his skull at you will be often overlooked. I never went to hospital once, and it was just like considered that, well, if it's a so-called mild traumatic brain injury, that it must be mild, but it's not. It's the whatever the calcification, calcium release from the brain, and like you said, it's all to do with brain chemistry as to
It's
how,
so complex. Yes,
yeah,
yes.
why one person walks away and is fine in 2 weeks, or another person isn't, and then 3 months, 12 months later, then you could possibly be stuck with PCS. So
Mm.
yeah, I mean, I know same thing. My lad, when he's here, when summer, it's like light at 5 o'clock, half five. He's like, "Daddy, you've got to get up. The sun's up." I'm like, on a Sunday. I'm like, "No, we don't have to get up. The sun's up." He'd like dive on me and that. Luckily, he never did anything like that to me. But yeah, so how did you then cope, Saskia, in the following weeks and months? And did you learn any strategies then that worked?
So in terms of coping, I am very fortunate to have an incredibly supportive husband. Um, and and I was also lucky that it was sort of like I think it was the third to last day of school holidays. So my kids were going back to school, which was lovely. Um, in the short term. So I guess in terms of coping, initially it was relearning how to walk and talk. They were the first two um, areas that I needed to sort of
Yeah, yeah,
relearn. So I just remember having like streams of words in my head that would usually just naturally come out of my mouth, but
yeah,
they didn't. And so it would be in my head, and I'd open my mouth, and it would sound like,
yeah,
and my husband would be like, Um, I just, so like, we ended up sort of creating languages where we'd point at things, or he'd ask me these yes no questions, and I could just do the yes no.
Yeah.
Um,
Mhm.
yeah, so I think I probably had, I don't know, it's quite blurry because obviously my brain was not at full capacity at that stage. It was yeah, maybe a month or so that we had to sort of that we coped in terms of communicating in that way, I think. And then I would get one word out and I'd just focus on that one word rather than the whole stream of thought until it came out of my mouth. And then I'd feel very excited that I got a word out. Like, it's
Well,
it's those
that's
little moments, you know.
no.
Um,
Sorry to interrupt. That
no,
sounds a
no,
lot
no.
like an acute and short case of aphasia. Because
Mm,
aphasia is where internally you can kind of understand and clarify and think about everything, but outwardly things like signpost signs and things read differently, or what you're saying doesn't always come out right. So I know I've got long-term aphasia, so it is like
mm,
to everybody
mm.
else who's talking a foreign language, but internally everything's fine. It's a it's a really bizarre thing, is aphasia, but it sounds like you had an acute case of that maybe to some extent.
Yeah, yeah. I would say that there wasn't a lot going on the inside, to be honest, David, either at that stage. But it was
Well,
enough that
sounds like
a
my
few
head most
words.
days.
Yeah, yeah. I'm sure there's far more going on for you. There was a lot going on upstairs, I don't think then. Um, in terms of, I'm just going back to trying to go back to your question then, those months. Oh, it was,
Yeah,
I
that's the
I
processing
recall
things. Yeah.
getting very excited about walking as well, like
Oh yeah.
I managed to figure out how to walk down the by holding the sides of the hallway with both hands. Then I could
Yeah.
figure out
Yeah.
how to. And I remember,
Yeah.
so in terms of my mental processes, I had to go, okay, right, touch the wall with this hand, touch the wall with this hand, right, stand up straight. Okay, right foot. Okay, right foot. Are you listening? Right, lift off the ground, move forward. Yep, now go down and down more until we touch the ground
Hmm.
and place the weight. And so every step initially, walking down the stairs, I remember like so,
Yeah. Yeah.
all of these things I had to retrain my brain, maybe, I don't know, relearn, but it was this
Absolutely right. Yeah.
intensely incremental steps in order to do that. And it was exhausting, obviously. Like, you
Yeah.
go,
Yeah.
in post concussion spaces, there's a lot of talk about, you go from having a full battery to being at sort of 10, 20%. Um, and really, I was really fortunate actually in those first few weeks. A friend of mine had been concussed a year or two before that. And
Mm.
so she popped round and she was like, it's okay to have your 10, 20% battery.
Mm.
That's how it is for a little bit. And so instead of me being trying to fight it, I think I was lucky because I could maybe accept that a little bit earlier on, and then build from there.
Yeah, of course, yeah, and I do remember in the early days myself as well. I had some paralysis. I woke up one morning. I was still clinging on to a job at that time, although they demoted me to the post room. I was doing mortgages, and it was a horrible job anyway. So I was glad when they kicked me out. But there's one Saturday morning I woke up and I was like, literally left side of my body's asleep. The right side's working, but the left side's not working. Ended up going to hospital, did a CT scan, and they left me in the corridor for about 2, 3 hours. And then I
Mm,
had to ask somebody like, "What's going on?" "Oh, you've got some brain swelling. You can go home now." I was like, "Okay, I better be a bit more careful in future." But yeah, I remember having to relearn quite a few things as well. Um,
mm.
and I'm so glad you got your beautiful husband, lovely man. He sounds like an awesome man to
Oh,
stand by
it's
you
fun.
and support you through all this. That's truly a wonderful thing. Um,
Yeah. I think you sort of see, what people around you, I was going to say are made of. I don't know. It's a bit of a weird
yeah,
thing.
yeah,
And the
yeah,
sentiment. I mean, it
yeah,
brings out the best in the people around you, I think. Um, or those that are like, oh, nah, I'm not touching that, you know. So there were people that I
Mm,
thought, you know, I'll ask them if they can give me a hand. And for them, they were just too overwhelmed with what was going on for me, or it didn't quite make sense. Um, there were others that were incredible. So my husband would come home, you know, leave work early so he could make dinner for us because I couldn't cook. I didn't know what anything in the kitchen was, let
mm.
alone read. You know, I remember opening the dishwasher at one stage and being thrilled with myself because I figured out how to open it. But then I looked inside and I was like, I don't know what any of these things are. I'm pretty sure that we usually put them somewhere and we do things with them,
Yeah.
but I don't know
Mm.
what those things are. So I'm just going to close that again. You know, like
Yeah,
these
no,
are the.
I remember having the dishwasher back when I was injured. I did have a dishwasher, not anymore. I am the dishwasher now.
Oh,
But yeah, it kind of it does. You just brought something to mind for me, Suskia, because I
yeah.
think it's when you do go through those initial stages, is a bit. It felt like me for being dropped on an alien planet with people that I recognized and things that I recognized and were familiar, but it was just like, there's like deja vu, but there's this thing called jamais vu as well, where
Okay.
that's where familiar situations seem really alien. So it was like
Yes.
jamais vu, blame it,
Jamais vu.
jamais
Oh, I
vu.
love it. Yay, we've got a word for
Je ne
it.
sais pas.
Je ne
So
sais
it was
pas,
like
je ne sais
that.
pas. Yeah.
Yeah, so it was like that for me as well. I was like, sat there some
Mm,
days going, what am I doing again? What's the plot? And I'm
yeah.
sure you must have felt similar. But yeah, I was on my own at the time when went through that. So I couldn't like
Oh,
just turn to somebody and go, oh, what am I supposed to be doing now?
yeah. Um,
Yeah,
yeah. I remember yeah. I was just thinking, yeah, the first time I rang ACC, I'm not sure what the equivalent is in the UK.
right.
Exit compensation. We pay like an ACC levy, and then if we have
Ah,
an
okay.
accident, they can support us financially and with medical support and things. I'm not
Oh
quite
yeah,
sure.
yeah. We have the department, very romantically named Department of Work and Pensions here. Uh,
Okay.
Jesus is basically people that don't care if you're sick, and if you can convince them strongly enough that you need to be helped or get someone on your behalf to do that, they'll actually give you a little bit of financial support. But it's brutal over here at the moment because it's over.
Oh, I
Yeah,
have I have I have heard that it's really tough over there. Over here, ACC,
that's another
yeah,
podcast.
that's another podcast for another day.
Yeah,
So
don't even go there.
it, the first time I rang them, I was on hold for 45 minutes, and they said, and when someone answered, they were like, "Hello, what's
Hmm.
your name? I'm blah 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 from ACC. What's your name?" And I said, "My name's
Oh,
Suskya." And they said, "What's your last name?" And I said, um. Anderson. I gave them my maiden name, even though I've been
maiden
married,
name. Right.
12 months. Well, maybe 10 years at that stage. And then they said, and what have you what's going on? And I said, my brain doesn't really work. And they were like, oh, okay, okay. And then because it turned out the doctor hadn't filed any ACC forms, which they should have, but
Oh.
didn't. And so I rang up. I was like, "Yeah, I've sort of got a brain injury, you know." Anyway, the next question was, "And what's your address?" And I was like, "I don't know." They were like, "How old are you?" I was like, "I don't know." What's your phone number?" "I don't know." Can you figure that out? Because I'm sort of ringing from it, you know.
Yeah.
And they're like, "Well, I'm sorry, if you don't actually know what your current last name is, and you don't know what your address is, we can't really help you." I was like, oh, well, that's
Bless.
disappointing.
Oh, good Lord. But no, but at least you you can look back on that now and laugh and find it humorous.
I did.
I
It was quite
I
funny. I ended
I
up
think
I went to my doctor and was like, okay, I think we have to do something. I think something has to be done. I don't know what the processes are. I don't really know. Still not sure of my last name, but I think I need some help because I can't. This is quite bad, you know.
yeah, yeah,
It's
yeah, no,
amazing. And
it's
then she activated all the ACC support. Um, yeah, and there were different times that I had to advocate quite intensely for things, but I had an incredible OT and an amazing concussion support team. So I was very, very, very fortunate. in that regard.
Yeah, I
Mm.
think obviously from what I think if I had apart from Gina, I think one of the Kiwi on the podcast before, but it seems
Mm.
to be that with a much smaller population we have here and much more civilized country, generally,
I don't know.
you
Yeah,
have. Oh,
maybe
I don't know.
rugby.
Oh,
Maybe rugby concussions are so important to our national spirit that we take them a little bit more
yeah,
seriously.
yeah, but you've also got the Maori spirit and that they're behind you, and
Oh,
that
yeah.
which is wonderful. And I've quite a few Kiwi friends, and they're all, they've all got that spirit. But here, I think things are crumbling pretty fast. They've been crumbling for years, but yeah, it's
Mm.
like nobody seems to care anymore, and nobody really wants to help you, and there's no funds left to do it. So it's like, well, you're on your own, mate. But
Oh my goodness. I'm so sorry to hear that. That's really tough, David. I'm so sorry that you
no,
haven't had
no,
the
it's just how it
experience.
is. And
Yeah, yeah.
given that, I wouldn't have learned all those years ago. I wouldn't have got off of any doctor's drugs that I was on because at one point I was on about 8, 9, 10, 11, and I didn't need any of them. So I
Oh
flipped
gosh.
it back in about 2009, 10, 11. Yeah, I flipped back off all that because I was on like a lot opioid painkillers. They're even giving me like benzos, all kinds of stuff. It's just horrible,
Oh,
horrible stuff. And got to 2011, 12, I was like, I'm gonna be gone if I keep taking this stuff. I'm gonna get off of it. So I did. So I've got a background in holistic health, Reiki, taught Reiki for over 20 years.
wow.
I practice water fasting, good things, homeopathic medicine, all that type of stuff now. And that all
Mm.
came, the catalyst from that was just being left on doctor's drugs, and they were just trying to diagnose me with everything else but PCS. Never got to see a neurologist, never got to see anybody needing hospital ever. So I was left on my
Oh,
own, and that is what
gosh.
inspired this podcast and this cause.
Yeah.
Otherwise,
And you got just before you were saying before we started, you said, you got concussed in 2006. And I think
that's
it's
right now.
really interesting, um, I wonder the extent to which that would be different if someone in the UK got concussed today. 20 years ago, I think there's been a lot of research and a lot of change. I'd like to think, ideally, in that space, but yeah, I don't know.
Yeah,
What do you think? A little
to
bit?
to a small to medium extent, yeah.
Right.
I've obviously been looking after witnesses over the last 20 years or so, because back
Mm.
then it was I had one GP, it was my local GP, who actually wrote a letter to my employers saying this man has post concussion syndrome, you need to treat him carefully. They didn't take any notice of it, and that was
Oh,
a rare thing. He didn't do anything else for me, but he wrote me that letter.
that's amazing. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Even knowing that's a thing, I think probably was, yeah,
Yeah,
quite.
apart from that though, there's still very little awareness. There's some growing awareness in the health services here. I did try to
Mm.
work with some neurologists from I think Newcastle Hospital up in the north of England here, but I
Mm.
made contact with him and we were going to do something together, but then his funding got cut. So
Oh,
here it is essentially it's every man and woman for themselves. And the
okay.
thing is, with our demographic in the UK, I live in, I grew up around Bradford, which is in the north, which is one of the financially, it used to be the richest city in the UK. Now,
Okay.
in the Woolen area, now it's one of the poorest. So the health services have suffered, there's no funding. But if you live in an
Mm.
affluent area, somewhere like Oxford or York or Edinburgh, somewhere like that, somewhere nice, then yeah, you're more
Mm.
likely to get access far more quickly to the right services. If you live in an
Mm.
area like mine, then that's it. It's like, nah, you're not getting nothing. So we'll give
It's
you the
interesting,
pills.
isn't it? Yeah, I think it's fascinating how that the geographical location can
Yeah,
impact, the amount of care that we can get. I
it is.
remember
Yeah, definitely.
being with my in my OT because I said we after I was probably 2 years post concussion and I could walk again and talk again and I was doing
Mhm.
a little bit of collaboration in research spaces with colleagues internationally and things were starting to sort of pick up again but I couldn't read and I couldn't drive because I couldn't
No.
see. So my vision didn't, yeah, my vision, my, how did she put it? Um, my visual system wasn't connected to my cognitive system. There we go.
Oh,
That's what I
no.
put it.
No, believe
Yeah.
me, I do know exactly what you mean because
Yeah.
I've loved books all my life and writing stuff as well. But yeah, once I got injured, because I've got see, loads of books, I've plenty more than that. But yeah,
Yeah.
there was a period of about 4 years where I could barely read a book. And
Yeah.
I didn't need
It's
glasses at the time
powerful.
either. I didn't, it's not like my eyesight was wrong. I couldn't focus. So what I did was
Yeah.
got into audiobooks.
Me too.
Yay. And then it's
Good
like, yeah.
podcast.
So the best thing is I found was, well, yeah, you got to bed in the evening that. It's like, all right, story time or whatever time. I don't read a lot of fiction. I usually just read, kind of non-fiction. But it was like,
Right.
oh, find an audiobook you want and listen to it that way. So I got
Mm,
round it. That was my little hack for doing that, and
yeah.
probably yours too. But
Yeah.
then obviously after I'd got off all the medications and stuff, I found that got a lot better. So then I got back into
Yeah.
reading and still just
Yeah.
massive bookworm
Yeah.
bibliophile today. So yeah, there was a
Oh,
period of time. Yeah, there was a period of
yeah.
time where I was just like
Yeah.
felt awful. And it was
It's,
I could read the words a few at a time, but then my mind would just go poof. And
yeah, I remember I
lost.
remember reading a whole children's book, like maybe 2 years in. I remember reading a whole children's book to my son. We were sitting on the couch and I read him this
Yeah,
whole book.
yeah,
And then he asked me a question, some sort of comprehension sort of question
yeah.
about the book. And I realized that I had understood none of the words, none of the concepts.
Mm.
There was some part of my brain that could read the word out loud,
Yeah,
but I
but
didn't know what it meant or anything. Like there was no connection. And even then, like at that stage, my eyes would literally like go sideways if I got overwhelmed. There was no peripheral vision. Like my vision was
yeah,
really blurry, and I would black out
right.
regularly.
Blimey.
Yeah, so it was quite like, yeah, the vision stuff was pretty intense. But what I was just getting back to the sort of the rural, the geographical comment you made before.
Yeah,
I didn't even realize at the time, but the vestibular optometrist that I ended up getting to work with or get treated by, turns out she's one of two in the country.
wow.
So this is where we get to this, we've got a population of 5 million. We're pretty,
Yeah,
spread out really in
uh-huh.
comparison to
Yeah,
many
yeah.
countries around the world. And and yeah, there are two people in our country,
Wow.
at that time that
Yeah,
were trained to be able to do vision therapy for people that had concussions. So I that's why I feel like I've been very fortunate with this, and I've had to fight, and it's been hard, really hard, and very hard on my friends and family as
I
well
bet.
that have
Yeah.
been so incredible. But yeah, it's interesting that in terms of being able to access the support that we need, I think that's definitely a challenge within this space.
Yeah, and I think what your population's roughly the same as Scotland, which are
Yeah, right.
neighbours above, and they've got loads of room like you have, and but then down south of there is like what 60 million Englanders and Welsh and Cornish and whatnot, and that's why all the resources are kind of like stretched between the higher population, like London and the big cities.
Yeah,
So yeah, it
yeah. And
becomes a bit of like a postcode lottery, and depending on where you live, as I would say,
mm,
which means that yeah, if you live in an area where you have access to that, then you're going to be able to access it. You're lucky. But like
mm.
you say, in other areas, you've got a snowball's chance in hell.
And
And
I think the challenge is compounded because if I'd broken I don't know, an arm or something, I
oh
could
yeah,
potentially drive myself to
mhm.
a hospital or a specialist appointment, you know. Um, but with concussion, like, I couldn't, I actually blacked out while driving
Oh
when
geez,
I was about 2 weeks post-concussion because I didn't realize how severe it was or what was
oh
happening
wow,
really.
wow.
And with my children in the car, Like, oh, good grief. Anyway, we didn't smash anything. No one died or was injured. I managed to feel the blackout coming and pull over, but on the
Yeah.
side of the motorway. Like, oh, good grief, when I think about it. But like, it's really tricky, I think, for us to access these support services when we can't actually physically get there. I
Yeah.
was very fortunate that ACC covered taxis and things because, I mean,
Mm.
otherwise I wouldn't have been able to access any of the support whatsoever. Um, I
No.
can't see, and I'm learning to walk. I'm not quite anywhere, well, no, nowhere near driving yet. You know, it's quite debilitating. Yeah, so I'm sorry that that isolation has meant you haven't had the support that you need. But I
Well,
love
it's
that from that
fantastic.
adversity, you've sort of developed this incredible resilience and now bringing this heightened awareness to this space. So it's
Oh,
incredible
yeah.
how these things work.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it is. Thank you for that. And it is in many ways, yeah, I had to develop that. So I didn't have any choice. Otherwise, I would have
Mm.
been dead years ago. And,
Oh gosh. David.
twice when I, I was stopped breathing and come back, I had near-death experiences twice through various things. And I've
Oh,
had, I think in total, I've had like 13 concussions between 2006 and 2020.
wow.
I did
You know
have
what I'm
one.
impressed with? I'm impressed that you know your number. I got to the stage where I couldn't remember anymore.
Yeah.
And I just
Yeah.
stopped
Well,
counting because I would
no.
smash my, I remember somehow hitting my head like a big outdoor gate. Somehow my
Mm.
head got in between, the bit that closed because there's no spatial awareness,
Oh,
right? And no
yeah.
peripheral vision. And, my vision was blurry in general. So, and fell over and I walked into, I would literally leave the sliding doors open
Okay.
so I didn't walk into them
Ouch.
because I had done it so many times and then just like fallen back, black, context myself again, blacked out, come to a little while later. Like, I don't
Fine.
even know my number. So anyway, I'm just impressed you know your number. I'm sorry. I just think that's really
Oh,
impressive.
no, yeah, because yeah. No, I learned like I said, post 2012, I got off all medications apart from opioid painkillers, which unfortunately
Mm.
was left on for 10 years and destroyed part of my
Oh,
kidney function and bowel function, which I will never
oh,
recover from. And that's another
mm.
story for another podcast. But I've already talked
Yeah.
about that in the past. But yeah, so everything apart from painkillers I got off of and replaced with natural medications, what we
Yeah.
call supplements, which are natural medicines, homeopathic. I learned how to use essential oils and all kinds of stuff. And then obviously I had my Reiki, used tuning
Mm.
forks for frequency, vibrational healing, all kinds of stuff. Um,
Mm.
so I had a big toolkit of things that I could use. So
Mm.
by the time it got to about 2017, 18, whatever, I actually learnt a strategy to be able to recover very quickly if I had another concussion. So I'd use
Oh,
natural anti-inflammatories, homeopathy, other stuff as
mm.
well. I just knew how to deal with it. So I'd been put through the
Mm.
mill again and again and again on purpose by the universe or whatever you want. And it was like by that point, and then I think it was, what year was it? It'd be about 2018. And again,
Mm.
I had two concussions on the same day. We
Oh,
stayed down in Oxford in a lovely old English farmhouse. But the thing with those places is the ceilings and beams are very, very low.
oh no.
I'm 6'3", and I'd gone. It happened twice within a couple of hours. So I'd gone out
Oh,
in the corridor. Some idiot kept turning the lights off in the corridor. So I stepped out of the hotel room, went to corridor, bash, head on a beam. And I literally, that was the first time I ever saw stars. You know, when you see like cartoon stars, it was literally, whoa, what's going on here? I could see the Milky Way. Went, went out and then come back again. And then it happened again later because somebody turned the lights off again. So it was like, but straight away, I went to my protocol. I had my Novosul curcumin and all this different stuff. I had the homeopathy and I had everything ready to tackle it. And I treated it right. I didn't go and lie down in the dark room for a week because I know that's not going to help you. And well, actually, you've got away, and I didn't suffer further from that. So yeah,
Oh,
I've healed most of it over the years. Obviously, I left for
mm,
the aphasia. Um, and in a
yeah.
recent podcast with Ben and Kim, they talked about neurofeedback to cure aphasia, but I don't have like
Mm,
£12,000, £1,200 or £2,000 to pay for that. So I'm not getting it on the health
right,
services. So I'll have to
right.
play a bit wacky and for now. But yeah, anyway, sorry, digressing. So
Oh no. That,
given
I
that,
just based on what you said, I've just sorry. Do you mind if I just
yeah, go on, go on.
you asked before about strategies and you've just so
Yes.
um one of the so my neck physio actually was very holistic and she was training in other sort of concussion specialist areas at the time, so I was very fortunate to have
Yeah.
her,
Mhm.
and she not only helped my neck go from being rock hard and prompting extreme migraines
Yeah.
over time, but she also she suggested an anti-inflammatory diet, or
Okay.
way of eating and drinking. Let's say I don't really
Mm.
like the word diet very much. And so she explained that the swelling, that my brain had, which was obvious, from the MRI, da 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 da. Explained that it could be that inflammation could be reduced depending on what I ate. And
Yeah.
I'd actually had like I think maybe a year or two before, oh, I don't know, a year or two before concussion, I'd had a severe gut infection, and the specialist I went to actually got me to eat in an anti-inflammatory way. So I'd done it before,
Right.
and so I was really, I was lucky in a way. By that stage, I was eating everything again, but like I could go back to it. I knew what I could eat, and I knew,
Yeah. Yeah.
and I had, recipes which I couldn't read, but at least I had an idea of the foods that would work and I
Yeah.
could eat. So that made a significant difference in terms of a strategy. And then alongside that, I did some work with her and was like, okay, I really want to take some supplements to help me. What would you recommend? And then I worked with my doctor and another specialist to try and come up with, what would work. And then we just sort of did lots of trial and error. And I'm still taking, yeah, I'm 5 years out next month. It's my 5 year anniversary. And yeah, yay, survived.
Yeah.
Really thriving now, really, to be honest, in comparison. But yeah, the supplements and eating in an anti-inflammatory way made a significant difference to my symptoms.
Yeah.
It significantly reduced things, even overnight, my ability to function and to be able to heal. I think it was a turning point. Yeah.
Yeah, and to be fair, I wish I'd known earlier about that side of things, like you said, dietary
Mm.
or what you're eating, because if I go back to when I was first injured and so on as well, yeah, I didn't at the time. I hadn't had the iatrogenic, that's the harm to my body from doctors' drugs and treatments. So after that, following that, I had like histamine intolerance from the painkillers damage to my kidneys and my gut, and also developed the gluten intolerance. So now no gluten because it's horrendous. It's like a 2 day
I still
hangover.
can't do gluten.
Horrible, horrible. But it's
No.
everything you love to eat, though, isn't it?
I've got really now that I can read, I'm
Yeah.
boasting, aren't I? Now that
Go
I
on,
can
go on.
read, um,
Go on, go on, go on.
I've got all these Pinterest folders full of gluten-free recipes for things that I love, so I can make my speculoos like yeah, like my mum did, and I can
No.
yeah, I can do all these recipes of things that I love. I mean, every now and then there's something I can't have, but we've
Yeah.
got really lots of great gluten-free options available for us. So I feel like I'm not really missing out anymore. It's sort of just been substituted, and it's just how it is. Um,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, I don't eat a heap of bread or something like that, but yeah, just
No,
change,
well,
just
yeah, I know what you mean because I can't touch any gluten whatsoever. Not a bit of pastry, not a bit of bread or anything. But both my granddad and my dad were bakers, worked as bakers. So that
oh my
my dad
goodness.
passed a couple of years ago. I was like, about a year or so, I was like, oh, I should have a go at baking again. I'd not done it since school, and I was like, all right, but I'm going to bake with corn flour because that's gluten free. So
Mm.
started making cornbread, different cornbreads and stuff, and then
Oh, nice.
brownies and biscuits and biscotti, all using cornbread. And I made them for friends and people, and that. And like, this is amazing. This is great. I was like, yeah, well, I've got. It's clearly been passed down the family line somehow.
Oh,
Yeah.
amazing,
So
amazing. It's so
I make my own.
liberating, though, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah. Just make my own cornbread. I put whatever I want in it, and it's no problem. Yeah, no, quite happy
Nice.
now. And I never
Yeah.
ever buy supermarket bread because it's usually full of all kinds of chemicals and additives and stuff. But I can't
Mm,
stand gluten at all. So yeah, and I think
mm,
that the impact that it has on the gut, there's more and more research and evidence these days that the gut heart brain relationship, not just through the vagus nerve, but it's the gut's one of the most powerful factories for serotonin and things that you need to
yeah.
recover when you're being concussed. So,
Yeah.
like you rightfully said, Suskya, you've got to sort out your diet. But I didn't know that back in the day. I've only sorted that out more recently. So,
Mm,
um, I was vegetarian for 16 years, then went back to eating fish, and now I've gone back, and now I've been on a carnivore diet for about 5 months, and that's
right.
massively helped me. I won't say I won't
Mm,
go back to vegetarian diet, but for
mm,
now, it's what my body needs, and I'm like, well. And I don't agree always with, I don't agree with any of the practices in the meat industry, but I try and buy organic and stuff. But I
mm.
think it's selective, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, I'm mindful that you had a question before, and then I went off onto like a diet and
Oh,
supplement tangent.
you're asking me what the question was.
Only if it's okay. Only if it's there.
Hang
If
on one
it's not,
second.
it's all right.
Um, yeah, you got me there.
No, no,
Anyway,
don't worry. No, no,
next question.
not a problem.
Next question. So, following the period that you went through in recovery and recuperation and sort of rehabilitation in getting yourself
Mm,
back together,
mm.
um, how did you fare once you felt able to? Were you able to go back to work and thrive again?
Because I've been uh doing my let's think. Last February, so 2 years ago, I got clearance from the neurologist that I could go back to study.
Yeah.
Um, and at that time, I also chose to go back to work part-time.
Okay.
Um, I was really strategic about where I chose to work. I
Mhm.
chose to work with people that I know will be supportive.
Yeah.
And the first time when I introduced myself in the staff room, I explained that I'd had concussion and it meant that sometimes I'll forget things and that it would be really helpful if they could, if I do, please just say it, because, it's just easier that way. That I'm impossible to offend. So please, if I've forgotten something or if it looks like I may have, please just help, like just say it. It's fine. I'm not going to,
Yeah.
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 So I was very strategic about choosing that environment. Um, Even though I was only working part-time, I would have a migraine for a full day. So for the first about, yeah, 6 months going back,
Mhm.
even just working part-time, I would have a migraine every day after
Right.
working. So like
Wow.
bedridden, not able to function in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah.
Because there was just so much, my brain was trying to learn the name of all my colleagues and all of our, students and all the ways of working in this new organization and,
Yeah.
everything to do with that new space. Yeah, so that was intense, but I was very strategic about where I went and I knew that I had people that would have my back. And I knew that I had a really awesome leader that I was working with and that yeah, yeah. I feel like I've got this new leash of life and I don't really want to waste it going somewhere and doing average things.
No, no, of course not. And it
You
does
know?
do that. Yeah, absolutely. It does do that to us. And like
Mm.
we talked about earlier with like what I had to do, it was like, well, my word, if that injury had been more serious, I might not be here. And then somebody else who's just been injured might need that help. And then it becomes a calling, doesn't it? It becomes an awareness, not just for you personally, but for
Yeah.
anybody in your family, in your community, or I guess with you with your pupils and colleagues. and so on as
Mm,
well.
mm.
And then, it spreads out and out until I think like the post-concussion community is one of the most open, friendly, and available generally ones on the planet. There are other
Yeah. But
conditions which are where everyone's at the throat, each other's throats over stuff and arguing about stuff. I mean,
yeah.
I tried to start a cause in the podcast for fibromyalgia a few years back, and it was just like banging my head on a brick wall.
Oh,
And that
okay.
is a really, really tough and difficult disability condition to get to grips with.
Mm,
And it's
massive.
just, yeah, messy. Everybody's symptoms are very, very different and diverse. And nobody wanted to
Mm,
talk to me. Anything I said in the podcast was like, everyone's getting angry and getting their hackles up. And I'm like, this is probably not a good thing to persevere with for now, maybe in a few years. So,
yeah, that's interesting.
but
Uh, can I just talk to that post-concussion sort of community for
of
a
course,
moment?
yeah, yeah, go ahead.
Um, so I think there's this weird thing where I was so, you know, so my friends have just been incredible. The mums organizing. I couldn't get my kids to school because I couldn't walk there and I couldn't drive there and I couldn't get them there. And they were little at the time. So in kindy, so my friends organized, to get my kids to and from school every day for like 2 terms. They made like a timetable, and there was just marvelous people just picked up the children and took them. So I'm so grateful for friends. I'm so grateful for my family. When it got to school holidays again and I realized that my brain was just going to explode and I couldn't do this by myself and my husband was working full time. And to be honest, he was traveling 70% of the time as well at then.
Oh,
And
God.
uh, my mum came and stayed and helped and she was incredible. All my family have just been amazing. But I think one of the things is that I felt like that they couldn't quite understand what I was going through. And I know that they have tried, but I feel like there's a degree to which if you haven't experienced it, you can't quite comprehend it. And I am so grateful for everything they've done, and I totally accept that some people are going to understand this in different ways. And I think we all have experienced different ways in
Yeah,
the first
yeah.
place. But one of the things that really helped me, um, well, after I went to the neuropsych and got the suicidal tendencies dealt with, I can talk to that more if you want and later, but
Yeah,
I'll just park it for now because that's quite a big fish.
yeah,
But
yeah,
the
no.
the post-concussion community, I joined, I think, like 10 post-concussion groups on
Right.
Facebook or something. And most of them, I don't know, they were really tough spaces. It
Mm,
was, I feel this way, I've had this traumatic experience. And I found most of them to be honest, which I really needed. Like, it's not
mm,
just me in the world
yeah.
experiencing this. It was helpful to get that sense of solidarity. But at the same time, it didn't really help me heal beyond that all that much because there was still such a deficit focus on our post-concussion living. Um, and then I found a group that was a little bit more positive and a little bit more proactive and gentle about this healing and being kind to ourselves and each other and really uplifting, I think. And the person that was running it decided to close it because she wanted to go online and make us all pay for it instead. Um,
Oh dear,
so
no.
there was a few of us from that group, I think four or
Mm,
five of us that went, you know what? Maybe we just do our own one.
yeah, yeah,
And so,
that's
yeah,
right.
what, 5 or 6 years ago, and now there's 4,000 people or something. And it's the most wonderful community. And I'm so grateful for them. They've got me through. They are the people that understand
Yeah,
how the concussion side of my life, because I don't think it is my whole life anymore. At
no,
one stage, it felt like it,
yeah,
but
yeah.
they understand the concussion side of my life really deeply. And I have really beautiful, amazing friends in that space and people I can talk to and ask questions. And now we've got to the stage where it's really beautiful because we can be advocates
Mm,
for
mhm.
others. And now that we've got to the stage that we've done a lot of healing. Um,
Yeah.
and it's really, I find that just I really love being able to, that altruism. I love being able to give back to the community that helped me so much. And I think it is helping me in an ongoing capacity, it's rather than a one-off. And actually that community, I think, actually helped change. Well, my brain is completely different post-concussion. I'm going to say that right now. I started writing my PhD. I was 3 years into it, had a certain topic, certain focus, got concussed. 3 years later, jumped back in, and I had a 180. I was very fortunate that my supervisors are open-minded and very supportive, beautiful humans, who allowed me to just do this complete change. And so then now it's about collective well-being, and it's about asset-based community development, and how that prompts and supports organizational change. And so it's a really different picture, but I don't think I would have come at it, or I think being part of that post-concussion community helped prompt these ideas that built towards the significant change in my PhD. So yeah, it's amazing how all of this is intertwined in these, diverse and dynamic, complex ways, right?
Yeah, and is that the New Zealand Recovery Support Concussion Group? Or
No, it's just called post-concussion living.
yes, I'm in that one as well. So I've got
Yeah, sorry, I didn't say that.
about
So
200 post-concussion groups
if
that I'm in. So
anyone's interested, join post-concussion living. It's
yeah,
positive, but it's really honest and blunt and open as well. And we just all support each other and lift each other up. And when
yeah.
there are really hard times, we wrap around. And
Mhm.
when there are small steps to be celebrated, we help celebrate. I think that's sort of
Good
where we're
stuff.
trying to come from.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I am in that group, I believe. But yeah,
Yeah, you are.
I've had to be
Yeah.
here the last 20 years, but yeah, no, it is a nice one. Um,
Yeah.
so yeah, I think that is, like you said, the essence of having online. It's like camaraderie, fellowship, and everything else as well. I kind of avoided the word support for our groups because we couldn't actually provide any real support to anybody physically. It could
Mm,
be like emotional encouragement and stuff as well, but I kind of avoided that. That was just my choice. And I know
right.
there's a lot of support groups out there, but then when you go into them and you're kind of looking for support, then there's actually very little there. And it's like, well, what are you going to support me with? Like a choice of what film I'm going to watch tonight or something. Um,
Yeah,
no,
I think
anyway,
I think of
don't mean
support
to be
as sort of a
disparaging.
relational element, I think, as well, maybe. So, in terms of having other people to talk to and throw ideas around
Yeah.
and be like, oh, this crazy thing happened. Has anyone else experienced this? So I think I quite like the word support, but we didn't put it in we didn't see it as a
No,
support. We've just
no.
because and I think then there's this sort of uh, there's this. I've had this question so many times, David.
Yeah.
I suspect
So,
you may have as well. People say, "Oh, is your brain all fixed now?"
yeah.
Hmm.
Oh, you look
Is
better.
it is it
You're
all
right
back
now.
to normal? Is it all back to how it was
Yeah,
before?
yeah.
And I really delicately try and sort of maneuver and go, well, I think I've got to a place where I don't think that's ever going to happen, and I'm okay with it. I have got a 2.0 brain, and this is how it
Yeah,
works. I'm learning how my new brain
yeah.
works,
It's a
and
hybrid.
every now and then it does something crazy. I'm like, wow, that was unexpected. So it is. It's relearning how to drive a new car. It's relearning how to drive this new brain, and what that means for our lives, right?
Yeah,
Yeah. Anyway,
or
sorry,
moving,
tangent, but
or maybe moving from driving a car to a tank. I don't know.
got
Yeah,
the
yeah.
Oh,
He's just like, well, you're going to switch vehicles. Well, we'll give you something else. Here's a 16
yes,
foot
yes,
Arctic or
yes.
whatever.
Yeah, a completely different model you've never driven
Yeah,
before.
yeah,
And on
yeah,
the other side of the road, and in
yeah,
snow conditions that you've never driven in before, or something
yeah.
crazy. Yeah,
That's right.
you're
And it runs on diesel. Yeah.
yes, and you're going to be
Oh,
driving on Mars.
yeah, no, it sounds
Alien
very familiar. It does sound
environment.
very familiar. But yeah, like I said before, we had to chip away for years to get to with running the groups, to get to a
Mm,
place where people, especially in North America, because when I think back in 2012 here, we legalized CBD. So I was taking CBD for fibromyalgia and for pain. But then just a few years after that, they legalized the use of medical cannabis in the United States. Before that, it was just like any conversation just got shut down or criticized and whatnot. And not that I don't take medical cannabis. I've like, tried it 3 times. Does absolutely nothing for me. Nothing
Mm,
whatsoever. And it's not the cure-all drug for everything. I think it just made me very anxious and very kind of like feeling uncomfortable. So yeah, it might be right for some people, and if that's what they want, that's fine. I'm not dissing
mm,
anybody. Let that lesson down the ears.
mm,
But that opened things up in a wider scope as well.
mm.
And then since that time, mid 2020s in USA and towards 2020, a lot of other things opened as well. In
Mm.
the treatment of chronic pain, like ketamine clinics and other stuff that which are all legislated and done properly, and all kind of other manner of stuff, MDMA for PTSD and all kinds of stuff, which has all been
Mm.
pioneered by the Americans mostly. That's taken its time. It's not
Yeah,
really spread too far. Obviously, psilocybin for depression, and end of life care as well. There's all kinds of things,
yeah.
but they've not really filtered out a lot. So it's still seen as a bit taboo in many places.
It's
I know,
interesting, isn't it? I
yeah.
think, when you're talking about that research development, sorry, I'm putting my researcher hat on here,
Oh,
my
go
nerd
on.
hat.
Put it on.
But yeah, we've seen such change in the last 10, well, let's say 15 years in terms of that sort of
Yeah,
trauma space.
definitely.
And while that often comes, from a place of psych, I think we're seeing far more understanding of traumatic injury because of this as well. And concussion research is relatively recent. At one stage, ACC had declined to fund my vision therapy, and I
Right.
could review the decision, and it was a judicial process. I had to. It was sort of almost like felt like being at court. It was a bit like being at court.
All right.
But I was to defend myself. It was not a very pleasant experience and very tough
Mhm.
with concussion. But what I ended up doing and leading up to it, one of my strategies is what can I do beforehand that's going to be really serve me in the moment. And so I went into, I mean, I had access to all the medical journals at my university, through my university. And so I went online and I did quite a decent amount of concussion research, but then also focused specifically on the concussion research in terms of vision therapy and
Mhm.
vestibular optometry.
Yeah.
And you know what? There was when I was writing that article, I ended up writing like a research piece so I could refer back to that in this judicial, hearing.
Yeah.
Um, and in it, when I was doing this research, it's fascinating because most of it is within the last, well, now probably within the last 10 years. At the time, most of it was in the last 5 years. I mean, that's so fresh, that's so
Yeah.
new,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
so we've, in terms of the research being there or in its really emergent sort of early stages, and then moving to sort of practitioner spaces because
Mhm.
of that, that takes time. And so I found it really
Yeah.
fascinating. I think, everything that we're doing to raise awareness in this space matters, but then also it's really exciting that the research is starting to be there to back up our experiences and what those support mechanisms can look like. Whether the funding is there to do so is perhaps a different story altogether. But at least the research is now there, I think,
Yeah.
and evolving in a really fast pace. It's just exploding, which is really
Yeah.
exciting. I think those of us who have, you know, been in this journey for a while. Yeah, sorry, just want to talk to the research stuff there.
Oh, no, that's great. Thank you. Yeah. And I think you're right. There's got to be a more developmental pathway towards healing in future. Now, I know the more and more study that's done into the brain and brain injury is a lot of it's more guided towards frequency. and light and different things as well, whereby there are different fashions to work without just without solidly without drugs and things or surgery into helping people with all a manner of ABI, acquired brain injury, and different neurological conditions, including concussion. And so
Mm,
those, again, a lot of pace. There's many things coming out of Japan and places like that where they tend to pioneer these types of treatments. But of course, then
mm,
it takes a lot of years to spread out around the world, the rest of the world.
mm.
Um, the healing side from psychedelics and things which are used in the proper context is another part of that puzzle, and it is something that is going to have to develop over a long course, a long period of time. We're not just going to get this stuff delivered to us like next week and hey, do you want it? It's going to, unless you're extremely wealthy and you can afford to travel or go to the right clinic or whatever. That was always
Mm.
my issue. And I don't mind speaking about this. I ended up self-medicating after concussion in order to try to find a solution and then got crucified for it. But that's because I was on my own and it was just like, well, I've got to do something because these,
Yeah,
these doctor's drugs just don't do a thing for me. And they're just
no.
making me worse and making my mood and my pain and everything worse. So I know
Mm,
there are a lot of other people out there that have probably done similar.
mm.
So yeah, it would be really great if they could speed up the clock and really get on with it and just like get on with this
Mm,
stuff. But then you've
mm,
got to look at who's backing it, who's
mm.
financially invested in it. And it's like, unfortunately, it's very few people outside of maybe the odd university here and there internationally. And then cui bono, who benefits? If there is a cure, then probably not anybody but the sufferers if it's available. And then you get into the old, well, pills are cheap to produce, and they've been around for a lot of years, and it's a good profit maker. And then we look at what else you've got, then, well, anything like a chiropractor or vestibular practitioner, anything like that, you generally got to pay for it yourself.
That's really tough, eh? It's just so tough.
It opens up a bit of a chasm where, like, if you are recovering from PCS and brain injury, then it is like that in the middle of that chasm is just you to fund it yourself and
Yeah.
and do it yourself
And
anyway.
that's really tough when we're in a space where we're not, able to necessarily work full time, or when
Yeah.
we're not able to
Sure,
bring in an income, and then we're having to pay for our own treatment.
yeah.
Yeah, that's really, really massive issue in our space.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it is, and we've tried to introduce this into the podcasts and things in the past. I've done a reasonably good job of that, and I think more people are starting to get on board with that, and have over the last 5 or 10 years as well, where
Mm.
we've been trying to repeat to them again and again. Don't just rely on the health services where you are because they're going to give you pills. They're not going to do a great deal for you. Just try
Yeah.
to learn a little bit more and try to show them the way. So.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's starting to feed through anyway.
Mm.
So anyway,
Actually, yeah,
go on.
no, what you're saying is just interesting. You just prompted a memory. I remember when I went to the doctor. Yeah, so it was early on, when I said I made that ACC phone call and didn't get anywhere. And she said, Saskia, I'm going to be completely honest. I haven't had specialized training in concussion. It is not something I have expertise in. I
Yeah,
have very little knowledge and understanding in this area. So
right.
what I want to do is I want to figure out how to be the best advocate for you so you can get what you need. And I just appreciated so much that honesty that she said,
Yeah,
this is
yeah,
not this is not my expertise. This is not my jam, but what can I do?
right, yeah.
And so it made such a difference because then
Mm.
her referrals could actually activate the ACC support team. So I had a sorry, I feel like I'm sort of bragging. This is terrible, but
No, no, no.
I'm so
That's
sorry
fine.
that you have not had support
No, no,
mechanisms
no,
that
no, no. Go
you
carry
need.
on,
At the
please.
same time, I just wanted to. So you said about that sort of holistic healing, almost like
Yeah.
sort of moving beyond that sort of cause and effect, direct impact. Oh, this is just a quick fix, take a pill, to that sort of holistic scope. So in my concussion team, I was very fortunate at different times to have an OT
Mm.
and a neck physio, a vestibular physio,
Wow.
um, and a at one stage I um, had to lobby for this as well, and we had to advocate and go quite high
Mm.
for it to happen. But I also got to see a neuropsych. So
Wow.
so I got to the stage about probably 6 months post concussion, and I said to the OT, look, you can sign me up with as many physios as you want.
Mm.
Um, however, my mental space is so dark that I'm not going to survive this.
Mm.
That's not the support I need at this stage. I don't care if, doesn't matter if I can see or not, doesn't matter if I can walk or not. My brain is so dark. And I have had, another bout in my life of mental health challenge.
Yeah, yeah.
Had
Mm.
postnatal distress. So it's not something I have lived with. It's not a norm in my life. But I said to her, I know how this feels. I am severely depressed and I'm starting to have suicidal thoughts. I
Mm.
need support with trying to figure out how to deal with this in my head, beyond dealing with this in my body, you know?
Yeah, yeah.
And yeah, initially all of my applications and hers were declined, and we worked through
Mm.
and went up and up and up and up and reviewed. And it was a really challenging process, but I was just so lucky to have her as an advocate for me
Mm.
in that space. And then I only saw the neuropsych probably for a couple of months, but that to be honest, that turned the tide for me. I went from being a victim in my own body and in my own lived experience, um, and yeah, suffering, and it was horrible,
Mm.
to being able and yeah, I really just wanted to end things. It was not something I could live with long term. I couldn't see a way to go on. It was horrible, very dark. And the going and seeing the neuropsych, oh, like there were just so many ways of thinking. And it's ironic because, I've studied psych for like, I don't know, I've 25 years. I did first
Yeah, yeah.
developmental psych
Uh-huh.
before I was teaching, and then I've done all
Mm.
this, since, and it's part of my master's, it's my part of my thesis. And so it was hilarious. He'd go, oh, so I'm thinking da da da. And I said, should we just jump to acceptance and commitment theory? Because I feel like that's sort of where you're going. And he's like, yeah, I am. Okay. Poor guy, he was his first year out. He'd only just graduated. Poor guy. He did an amazing job.
Oh,
Um,
dear.
yeah, I feel for it, but it was great because it actually put me back in the driver's seat of my own healing journey.
Yeah, yeah.
It activated that agency that I needed to go, no, 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 I have choices. I can make decisions. Yes, my boat has gone from, like there's that idea of, what you can control is inside your
Yeah,
boat, right?
yeah,
And my boat had gone from, I was a good sized, shipping container ship or something. I felt like I knew,
yeah.
there's quite a lot I could control in my life, da 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 da. And then suddenly I'm in a dinghy.
Oh,
You
kayak.
know, I can control a kayak. I'm in a kayak and I can control this much, but it was
Yeah.
brilliant because I realized that within that
Uh,
dinghy there was still a whole lot that I could control or influence, and that made a significant difference. Suddenly it was me and I'm in charge of my own healing. And around that time I also found neurosculpting, which has been brilliant to reset sort of all the mindset stuff that starts happening. It's a really tough place, not just physically, but psychologically. And I just wanted to raise that matters in our healing journey, holistically just as much as any of the physical side of things.
yeah, indeed, and that's a really good analogy. I like that one. I think I'm like floating around on a raft some days, but no, yeah, no, it's a good way of putting it. And yeah, I think uh, I just don't know the system here. Even back when I got injured, was pretty broken. So I kept telling them I've got these issues with concussion issues and stuff like that. And I tried for, I think, 8 years through one, two, three, 4 or 5 concussions to get to see anybody in the neurology department. And
Mm.
eventually, after 8 years, the only reason they let me see a neuropsychologist was because I'd applied to get my driver's license back. So they
Oh
sent me,
yeah.
yeah, and that was the only reason he agreed to let me see one after 8 years and his concussion.
My
So I
gosh.
went along. It's a funny story I've told before. Went along, and like you said, the guy was just like fresh out of college or whatever. I started talking to him, and like it quickly dawned on me, even with my ailing brain, that well, he's got no idea what I'm talking about. He's got no idea the symptoms. He's got no idea of what the course of action take, whatever. So I think
Mm.
I went back in the second session and I did a bargain with him. I said, look, I don't want to waste your time. And I didn't say you're wasting my time, but I said, well, if you just agree that I'm kind of compass mentis enough to have my driving license back, then
Yeah.
I won't bother you with a third or fourth session or whatever. And he just went, he couldn't get to sign it quickly enough because I'd asked him all these questions. He was like, and
Oh,
he looked like a dog that had been shown a card trick.
oh,
He was just like, I was like, oh, well, okay. Well, I guess we're not going to get on, but at least can we do a bargain? So it was like doing a deal with the devil in the end. And I never
oh,
went
geez.
back because there
At
was
least you
nothing.
find it. Yeah.
He just wanted to get rid of me.
Oh dear.
I
I
don't
know
blame
I was
him.
lucky that the neuropsych, even though he was fresh, I think his PhD had been in post concussion
Oh, okay.
neuropsych. So I was
Right.
lucky. He knew his stuff. Yeah, he was brilliant. And in fact, I think that's all he
That's,
did. He
yeah.
only worked post with people who had been concussed. So
All right. Well, that's a different.
yeah, I was lucky. But again, that's fresh. He talked about how there was not a lot of people doing what he does. It's fresh, it's new. Like we're in this, the research to be able to support this space is really fresh.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
of course.
And we're navigating it, while the research is evolving.
No,
Mm,
'cause it takes quite a lot of months and years sometimes to transfer from the research stage into any kind of hospital teaching or anything psychiatry, psychology, anything further than that. I think it can take quite a while to filter through.
mm.
And that's I've been lucky enough to see what's filtered through since, well, nearly 20 years now,
Wow,
22.
you've been in this spape for a long time. You've seen I imagine you've seen incredible changes in
Oh,
that time.
I know, and they can't get rid of me.
That's a good thing. We need
They
advocates
can't get
and
rid of me. No, they keep.
we need
And
advocates like you.
yeah, with the podcast, I just like when I approach yourself to come on as well. I get maybe 4 or 5 emails a week from these intermediaries in the US and Canada and other places, and like, oh, we've got this exciting guest for you, and they build them up with like a whole. We watch your podcast and this, that, and the other, and they're like da di da di da di da. And this started happening when I started up nearly a year ago, and it started. It was a regular thing, and it's like, wow, there's some really decent people, like doctors and all kinds of people, and all kinds of manner of people. It's like they look really cool. I'd love to have them on, but then these
Mm,
intermediaries, they just reply to them and say, well, okay, can you put me in touch with a person? I'd love to talk to them, this, that, either.
mm.
And then you get no reply. And they'd be like,
Oh,
that's
that's
a bit
interesting.
weird. So like eight
Mm,
out of 10 wouldn't reply. The ones that did reply, then it was like, well, no, you're just talking to me. And I'm like, oh, I want you to talk to someone else. And it was like another, and so it just went on and on. I think there were like two that came out of those. But then after that, I just gave up. There was so
right.
many, getting dozens, and there was just no reply or there was nothing back. And like, well,
Mm.
why did you contact me? Why did you contact us in the first place if like you're not? Oh, anyway, yeah. So it got a bit odd. So now he still
Um,
just like talk to people I want to talk to, and that's fine. Um, so yeah, we had one recently with William Person, who was a US bobsleigh team member for
mm,
many years. He was a
mm.
fascinating podcast. He was the only one that really worked out through that. But
Mm.
yeah, I just prefer it when people are just honest and straightforward. It's much
Yeah,
easier.
yeah,
Right.
yeah.
So moving on a little bit further
Yes.
forwards as well. In terms of post care, after you said, I don't know if you're still in touch with any of those team members that you had before for support, but we delved a little bit earlier on into supplementation and natural medicine. Are you able to share anything that specifically works for you, Saskia, these days to maintain uh, your health and your awareness and perception?
Yeah, sure. Um, yeah, so that the concussion support team was sort of for the first, I think, a year or 18 months, and then I had the vision therapy for 6 months in that third year for yeah. So I've had a couple of years now where it's just me. And so yeah, it's what do we do after that, right? And how we continuing our healing journey and finding ways to live our lives with this, right?
Yeah.
In terms of and compared to our brains going back to 100% what they were before, you know.
Mm.
So for me, and we've talked about this a wee bit already, I'm still eating an anti-inflammatory diet. If I have any alcohol, I have a migraine the next day. I'm in bed and screwed. Um, yeah. And every now and then I can have a little bit and I'm okay. But yeah, most of the time I have, yeah, and gluten is just can't touch it. Every
No.
now and then I can have a dairy, you know, but overall I've just got to be quite mindful of what I put in my body. I have very extreme, basically my post-concussion symptoms come back if I don't. It's that
Yeah,
simple.
yeah, no, I understand.
Um, yeah, the supplements that have helped me, I'm taking at the moment I'm taking a B complex,
Mhm.
a little bit of 5-HTP,
Yes, yeah.
um, magnesium before sleep.
Snap, glycinate?
Um, yeah,
Snap?
there's a brain fuel one which I'm taking at the
Okay.
moment. Which it's just got a whole lot of different herbs in it, you know.
Mhm.
So yeah, and then so that would be sort of the what we're putting into the body sort of side
Yeah,
of things in terms um of how living now and trying to get to that place where it's sustainable. Well, ideally, I'm still restoring the
yeah,
energy systems and how I want to be and who I want to be. Um, for me, it's also been really important. The exercise has been massive. So I don't know, early on, I remember. So over here they do buffalo tests on us, the physios. So a buffalo test is
okay.
when they
Yeah,
put you on a treadmill and you
yeah.
run until you can't. You walk or run until you can't. You basically collapse or whatever, where your brain just goes boo. Um, and for me, it would look like a collapse and a blackout, or a faint. But for other people, it looked like different things. They just get a blast. But anyway, they just literally put you on a treadmill and then just keep upping the elevation until you have a critical moment, let's say,
Yeah.
which is very unpleasant. Um, but they do that in order to see sort of what level your heart rate can be at before it prompts significant symptoms. So in the beginning, I was allowed to get my heart rate up to 100, but not over it.
Okay.
I was allowed to walk for 10 minutes on the flat. We live halfway up a hill. 10 minutes on
Ah,
the flat
okay.
without getting my heart rate over 100. And I was like, I can't even get my kids to school
No,
without
no.
getting my heart rate higher than that. And so I would sit down, like for, I think it's a 15-minute walk uphill to get my kids to school. So I would sit down and when I felt myself starting to black out, getting all dizzy, sit down, the vertigo's kicked in. Okay, right. Sorry, boys. I just need to drink some water and have some breaths, and then we'll do the next sort of, few hundred meters. It was a little bit crazy. But once I realized that um, from there I could build on it. And what ended up, I was really, yeah, it just made, it was lucky that we were sort of coming into summer at that time as well. And so what I decided to do is I was just going to walk 5 minutes more each day.
Mhm.
So it was
Yeah.
just a very small, and initially it was just the letterbox and back, and then it went a little bit
Yeah,
further
of
and a
course.
little
Yeah,
bit further.
yeah.
And every day I just did 5 minutes more of whatever. And now I am at the stage where I can go for trail runs, and I did like
Oh,
a
good.
10K in the weekend on last week. Um And um, yeah, I that has made a massive difference for me. Um, but I was lucky because I had all that vestibular physio support and vestibular optometry support. So it meant that I reset my peripheral vision and being able to move in spaces and things like that. Initially was really hard. I just trip over everything. But it's
Oh, that's good. That's good.
helped that side of it as well. So yeah, so I guess there's sort of the what we're putting in our body, but then there's also the exercise. So if I even have a couple of days where I don't do any, I notice that symptoms will start to come back. Like, so for me it's really critical.
Oh,
And then
right.
I guess sort of if we're talking about the mental health side of things, gratitude's really important. And I'm still doing my neurosculpting. So neurosculpting is basically this concept where you watch the thoughts that are coming. Well, I don't know. This is how I've perceived it. It's probably, I'm not sure if this is exactly what they'd say in the books.
Yeah, go on.
This is
Go
how
on.
it makes sense for me. Um, the idea that you're sort of watching the thoughts that are coming in and out of your mind, and you're choosing the ones that serve you, and then observing the ones that don't, and then thinking, okay, where is that coming from, and how can I change that? So you sort of like, for example, I would go, I can't walk past the letterbox. I can't walk past the letterbox because I did that and I blacked out 2 days ago. I can't walk past the letterbox. That's what you're telling yourself. All of that self-talk really can be empowering or debilitating. And so yeah, so I got to the letterbox and then the next day, so in terms of the neurosculpting, the idea is you take an action that's a little bit further. So if I just got to the neighbor's letterbox and then I came back and then I would say to my brain, oh wow, we can walk past the letterbox. We can walk past the letterbox. We can get further than that. We can get further than that. We can get. So you're sort of resetting a whole lot of the mindset, which can be really limiting and keep you in that sort of victim space as opposed to being in that sort of agentic,
No, no,
um,
no.
judge my life space,
No, no, I understand. I get a concept of it. Right. Um, just for one moment, I'm just going
Yes.
to, and so, yeah, we just had a little comfort break there. Um, Saskia, we just chatted a little bit about resilience through recovery from all kinds of life events. Obviously, we're focused and centered on recovery from traumatic brain injury and PCS here.
Mm.
How do you how have you dealt with uh, your uh, mental, psychological, spiritual recovery as well? I know we talked a little bit about healing stuff as well. How have you found certain strategies and people that have helped you?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, there's I think I've got, you briefly sort of touched on it earlier. But the social side of things is really challenging after, for me anyway, it was really challenging after concussion. I have had to relearn how to have a conversation with other human beings in different contexts, what's appropriate when, and all of those nuances that, we develop over our lifetimes, they weren't there. And I'm still learning in that space. That's an ongoing challenge for me.
Yeah.
But well, ongoing learning, let's say. Um, but it makes me think a wee bit of, I might just touch on some of my PhD research. Is that all right?
Yeah,
So,
cool. Yeah.
okay, so from sort of what was really interesting is so I had 735 amazing teachers and leaders that shared well-being ideas and needs and practices with me.
Uh-huh.
Um, and one of the really interesting themes that came out was that those highest levels of well-being, which we also often call flourishing. So those, when we were talking about that optimal sort of level of well-being that really
Yeah. Hmm.
really working well in our lives, and yeah, anyway, feeling good, functioning well, um, we then most of the people that talked about those really elevated levels of well-being and flourishing, they had come from significantly adverse situations. So for example, and often collectively as well. Sometimes it was individual, like they'd had a disease which they had overcome and lived through, which was life-threatening.
Okay.
Or in other cases, they'd had a family member pass away, or or in other situations, sadly, there was quite a strong quite a few of these, but also suicide in schools. So
Mm.
having our students
Yeah.
um, take their own lives, there was these elements, and that came through from multiple sectors, from multiple avenues, unfortunately. But that level of collective adversity and collective challenge developed this level of resilience and deeper connections within those communities that had these horrific
Yeah.
experience. Um, but then together to move through that trauma and that pain and find ways to to restore and heal, and then ideally get to a regenerative place. They were the contexts and the situations where there was that the most flourishing happened. Um, so it's and sorry, that's not very well
No,
articulated perhaps, but it's really
no, it's fine.
fascinating that, through these traumatic experiences, we we as humans, we can let, once we get to a stage where we're in the driver's seat again, and we
Yeah.
can go, hey, we do have a boat still. What's
Yeah.
in it?
Awesome.
My influence. I still have a boat.
Got a kayak.
Yay, go kayak! Hopefully there's a pedal as well. That would be
Oh
ideal.
yeah, that'd be helpful. Yeah.
You know. But then we get to this place where there's opportunities for us to, give back to these our communities, like you're
Yeah.
doing through this podcast, like I'm trying to do in our post concussion living Facebook group, you know, and in other ways in these educational and mental health spaces. So I guess I just want to sort of tag that the sort of what that healing looks like, and where I see the place of
Mm.
adversity, resilience, and trauma in getting to that place of optimal well-being or flourishing. Um, yeah, there we go. I've gone on a total
Uh,
tangent. I can't even remember what
yeah,
your question was.
that's
I'm so
fine.
sorry.
Tangents and rabbit holes and diversity. What we're about in this podcast is absolutely not a problem whatsoever. And
Okay.
so then on the back of that, your response there was that, well, you did mention, and I know it may be sensitive to talk about, you don't have to mention names or anything, but uh, given the time you spent in the educational sector, and you said have you any experience firsthand of children or young people that had suffered concussions following your injury that you could then give some encouragement and advice to?
Yes, I have actually.
Right.
Um, so in my consultancy work, sometimes I get the privilege of working with young people, usually who are neurodiverse, and their neurodiversity is complex.
Yes.
Um, those are the situations that I really love,
Mhm.
digging into and being able to support young people and their families with. Or through, let's say. But yes, so some of the young people that I have worked with have had concussions. One of them had had two severe concussions by the age of 16.
Right.
Um, um, and I was already working with him after the first concussion.
Mhm.
And we'd got a rapport and a really strong professional relationship, and we could be really honest and you know, open with each other.
Yeah. Mhm.
And there was obviously like sort of still a learning focus, but also sort of some strong sort of psych coming in and informing how we did things. Where's your well-being at today? Let's check in different ways, and what's working for you in terms of the learning, but also in terms of your well-being. So sort of having both those those elements there, and then trying to check in terms of neuroscience, like where are things at neurologically as well. But yeah, one of the young people that I've worked with that had those two concussions. So I already knew him well beforehand, before the second concussion, and after it, it was really fascinating because in the way that I've experienced my brain changing, he did too.
Yeah.
And
Uh-huh.
it's interesting because he would say, "Oh, I feel like I'm this different person." I would say, "Oh, I get that. I understand that." And how does it feel? Which bits sit with you, which bits don't, and we could explore that and dig into that
Sure, yeah.
um, in different ways, which was really exciting for me. Well, it meant that I could sort of bring something to those conversations. Um, and it meant that there were strategies too. So I worked with him and very, very closely with his family as well. Um, Checking in regularly in different ways, but then also being able to help his teachers to understand where he was coming from and strategies that might be able to support him post-concussion, in terms of being able to access the education system again, but in different
Mhm.
ways, initially, and then strategies for in the classroom and then afterwards as well. Um, but yeah, I think that relationship, that high trust relationship is what helped in that situation the
Yeah.
most, because he knew he could just be really open and honest with me. And he's like, wow, you're one of the only people that actually gets this. And it was that feeling, when I was talking about it, I've got these beautiful people around me and an incredible social support system. And I'm
Mhm.
so, so
Mhm.
grateful for that. And the part of that social system with that post-concussion community, they understood things in a different way. And I really appreciated that. And so it was lovely to be able to, in that case, obviously, support him in that way
Yeah.
too.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
that's very affirmative for yourself and for him as well. But especially your point of view is like, well, you actually got to um, use your lived experience and so on in order to aid another human being, and it did not, regardless of age or whatever. I think that's really important. I think it is something that can affect anybody of any age, and it's
Mhm.
some illnesses or disabilities and things are limited to a certain kind of age or demographic of people. But yeah, this is
Mhm.
just something that from children to elderly people is just across the board. So yeah, well done you. It's just
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
and then
Is it
I do,
fascinating?
yeah, I've got a sense from talking to you that in future you'll go on to do more kind of things like that. You'll go on to find other areas and places where you can do more of that because you seem to have a really firm grasp and understanding of how, like that in that situation where you said where he got what you were saying and you got each other, that's a real skill. So yeah, no, I think that's probably your calling in a way, and hopefully you'll let us know in future you can get into
Yeah, I'll do another. No, I promised my husband I'm not going to do another PhD, because it's been so good with my lives, and I'm actually really excited about working full time here. But yeah,
Oh,
I'm hoping to work in spaces where I can um probably influence wider communities, but in ways that
yeah.
are trauma informed and culturally sustaining and valuing, sort of ways. Yeah, yeah.
Well, this is it. You can make a difference simply by talking openly, like we're doing now about these types of things, and you can do it in a private enclave where you're doing that one-on-one. But we do it in podcasting and other areas as well, whereby it gives a wider uh, uh, a wider proportion of the population the ability to tap into what we're talking about. And there will be
Mm,
people listening to this now thinking, well, actually, maybe my lived experience would help me in future and so on.
definitely.
So
Mm.
for sure, it's something that anybody listening to this will don't ever discount yourself. Like we're saying, well, I said to you during the break that we had that I've got no academical skills whatsoever, but I just keep talking, keep talking, and keep recording podcasts, and somehow it reaches people that need to
Definitely.
hear it. So, and then
Yeah.
likewise with yourself, Saskia, if you keep on that same path, then I do believe that yeah, you'll find an area where you you just everything slots into place as well. Um,
Thank you. That's very heartening. I think after handing in my PhD the other week, and I've sort of I've got the next step, the next short-term step lined up, but long-term,
good, good.
yeah, I haven't got the, the exact pathway, so it's sort of exploring it and
Well,
figuring out,
no,
navigating that.
you very rarely do. You very rarely have a clear-cut pathway, which is like, just go this way and this will lead you to, achieve what you need in this area. I think
Mm,
sometimes it's a bit of destiny, a bit of karma,
yeah,
whatever you talk want to, however you want to describe it.
yeah,
Plato said, you become the things that you do. It was as
yeah,
simple as that. And he's like, well, yeah, if you keep doing bad things, you become, and if you keep doing the things that you need to do, are things that are good for other people, your community, your people around you, people that you relate to, then that will become what you are. So,
yeah. My dad has this quote that he used to say
oh,
when we were growing up, where your attention is, there you are. What your
oh,
attention is upon, that you become.
yeah,
And so I think there's
yeah.
such in us choosing our thoughts, for me, that's where the neurosculpting has been really helpful in that healing journey. But also, how are we choosing to perceive this? And I'm not saying that there's not horrifically dark, horrible times within that post-concussion journey. Like there is, and it's
Mm,
harrowing.
yeah,
And
yeah.
and I wouldn't wish it on anyone ever. You
No.
know, at the same time, how we choose, I just feel like, David, you were saying you don't have an academic background, but for me, it's not about academia, it's about the
Yeah.
learning and
Mhm.
how we apply that to our lives. Our lives is our classroom, really, right? And so
Good.
instead it's the, what are we focusing on? Where do we want to take this, and how do we want to get there? And what's lifting, what's making us glow at the same time as lifting others around us, so I think there's a lot of potential in that space, but thank you for your kind words and your belief that I've got something in the
Yeah, no, I
pipeline
just,
today that
well,
will
yeah,
yeah, it'll be a difference.
yeah, I do a lot of different stuff, I worked for 30, oh yeah, 30 years as well as a tarot reader, rune reader, and like a psychic, occasionally trance medium as well, stuff as well. I occasionally get insights, get little spots from people, but when you connect to somebody and you're talking, you get a flash of something. So yeah, I think because your positivity and going the right way, and you've got all the knowledge and the skills and the life experience, the lived experience behind you, that yeah, you should just go towards that. And because, like I said, for me, when I started out, it was like, I've got to do this. Nobody else is doing it. I've got to do it. And it was like a driving force for me. So that your background is a driving force for you. And it's been the
Mm.
same with so many other people that I've talked to on the podcast is like, yeah, but they all go in different ways and different areas, and none of us can replicate what the other's doing. We, we can't, it would be pointless to try and uh, replicate what other people are doing. You've just got to
Oh, definitely.
forge your own avenue, haven't you?
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. One of the findings that came out of my research was that um, practices that may be the strongest in terms of enhancing one person's well-being
Yeah.
may actually be that same strategy, may be that which um, decreases another's by the
Oh,
most.
yeah. That's a good point.
Things that
That's a
things
really
that
good point. Yeah.
there's significant
Yeah.
diversity in what makes us tick, but also make what makes us well, what
Yeah.
makes us, what makes us who we are, but also what makes us, feel like we've got a sense of purpose. It's really, really diverse.
Yeah, it is.
Us as humans, we're born with brains that are more unique than our fingerprints, and then we have these
Yeah.
incredibly diverse experiences. How are we possibly going to consider the fact that we're all the same and we need the same things in the same ways at the same time? Yeah, it blows my mind that we could even perceive that.
Yeah,
We're
well,
so,
I think that's one of the great mysteries of life, especially in these modern times where everything's been overcomplicated digitally to the nth degree. And we have
mm,
so many. things to focus on, so many opinions, so many points of view, and everything else. But it's done through the context of like social media and text and other stuff where all the meaning, most of the meaning, often gets lost, doesn't it? So you can have all this amazing knowledge and experience and so on, but if you can't quite express it right, and I think that is one of the tide marks with post concussion syndrome is like you can't always explain yourself to the best you can unless you're directly involved with somebody or somebody's involved in your life. So it's like a double-edged sword for me. It's like, well, if I could get out of my head everything I knew about the last 20 years and so on, and I did try to start writing a book at one point, but I couldn't get on with it. If I could get all that out, well, yeah, it would be good for certain people. But then
Mm.
you've got to take into account your own health and your own ability to do that. And that's why podcasting, I think, seems to be a bit better than writing on this. I've written articles and things on the history of post-concussive syndrome, a blog and stuff like that in the past.
Mm.
But I couldn't keep up to it and maintain it because fewer and fewer people were reading. And now
Yeah.
we live in this t TLDR generation where if it's something over a paragraph, no one's going to read it.
Yes. And this works for your brain, right? Like this works
Yeah, of
for you
course.
and how you think. Like you were telling me earlier that you haven't written any questions down. You just have a natural
No,
conversation. Like this is this is
never,
this
never,
this
never a
is a
single one.
superpower of yours, David.
Well, people tell me that. I'm still trying to convince myself. But I've done other podcasts as well for other things. But yeah, it's
Mm,
just, I think where it started for me was when I was, like I said, during the break, I left school at 15. So I went straight into work and I was working with the public and partly in a workshop and repairing musical instruments and stuff. But I had to learn how to deal with the public. And before that, I'd been working since I was 11. Actually, I started working at 11. I was working 30 hours a week, going to school, doing paper rounds, and then got a job somewhere else, and then and then I went on to work in the luxury watch and jewelry business and managed stores, learned to manage stores for about 15 years or so. So I was constantly having to be customer facing. And I was very
mm,
shy when I was younger, and because of certain things. I was very like, well, I won't say boo to a goose, but I had to very quickly learn people skills and social skills and how to deal with people from all walks of life because it was luxury stuff. It wasn't just like I grew up in a working class city, working class town here, and I had to learn to deal with like all kinds of people, like sports people, people off TV and coming in and that. And I had to learn how to talk to them properly and not be like, well, and I just thought, well, you could be yourself, but then the thing was, well, I had to learn those skills. So I guess that stayed with me. And then when I started podcasting, I was like, well, yeah, I used to talk to 20, 30, 40, 50 people a day in that job and at Christmas time, even more sometimes. So like
mm.
your cognitive skills, even though I've been through the brain injuries and all that, I eventually managed to drag out the swamp all these old skills and put them to work again. So thank you for saying that. But I don't know. I never plan anything, never write anything down.
Amazing.
It's just it is what it is. So we touched on going back to trauma as well. Now, trauma is something that I've read and studied a lot about in the past few years. And
Mm,
if we're talking about post-concussive trauma,
mm,
now, we can split that down into several categories. We've got, alongside amnesia,
mm,
we've got post-concussive trauma, which is a combination of post-traumatic amnesia, which is something that happens shortly after a concussion or a brain injury. We've got retrograde amnesia, which is then where you fail to remember and record things from your past pre-injury, and we've got
mm.
retrograde amnesia, where you struggle to make new memories. Can you say anything, Suskya, about how any of those types of amnesia affected yourself, please?
Yeah, sure. Well, I spoke earlier about, ringing ACC and not being able to remember my last name.
Yeah.
Um,
Oh, yeah, yeah.
very
I forgot
So
that point.
yeah, so
My bad.
there's that. There was definitely that element of amnesia then. Um, it was to such an extent that I remembered my OT would come and would have these conversations,
Hmm.
and while we were having the conversations, it made so much sense, and I was like, "Oh, great! I know what I need to do next." I'd get this sense of clarity in the session, and then she'd walk out the door, and I would think, "I can't remember anything we discussed whatsoever.
Right.
Nothing. Every
Yeah.
single thing we discussed was gone." So one of my strategies early on was, even though I couldn't quite read, I could still write down words after a while, sort of maybe 6, 7 months, and I could write something. So I would just write like a key word that she'd said that had prompted something. So I would sit there, and then I got to the stage where I would take my notebook to every appointment, because I realized that after each appointment, I couldn't remember any of the exercises I'd said. I couldn't remember any of the,
Right. Okay.
epiphanies I'd had, any of the, wisdom that they'd shared. I'd leave an appointment and be like, yeah, I've got, and my husband would be like, oh, did you see the OT today? And I was like, can't remember.
Think
Might
so.
have.
For sure. For
So,
sure.
yeah, so I got to this place where I've had to write quite a lot down.
Hmm.
Um, initially, like my background, I've led digital learning and technologies in school, and so I
Okay.
like using technology, but I couldn't figure out how to turn things on. I couldn't remember any passwords, and so
Oh
I,
no.
I honestly, it didn't work for me. So I still have like a paper weekly calendar that I'm using every week, and I write all the things in it that I need to do, and and it helps me to remember appointments and survive, just
Yeah.
get
Yeah.
through to stay on top of stuff. If I don't, it's gone.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
and I'll sometimes I wake up in the middle and like, oh, I wrote that down, it's okay. Or sometimes, oh my gosh, I didn't write it down. Like, oh, I had this moment like on Tuesday in the middle of the night. I woke up and was like, tomorrow's the last day of school for my children, and I haven't got a present for my older son's teacher. Oh my God, like, how did I miss that? But it wasn't on a list. It wasn't written
Hmm.
down. And so I quickly went and, organized things. But, so the amnesia, I guess, manifests in different ways at different times. If I'm really tired, I will forget
Good.
a lot of what's happened today. I will struggle with high level cognitive conversations or reading or writing. Other times, if I've had lots of sleep and got a decent night's rest for a few nights in a row, I can remember. Oh, yes, it was this theorist, and their theory was this, 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 and it means in this context that blah, 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 blah. And then I'm off and away. So um, I guess I just try and be really transparent with people around me about where I'm at with that,
Hmm.
whether it's colleagues or family or friends, and people are usually relatively open to that, and helpful in those situations.
Yeah, they
Um,
remind you of stuff, and do
I,
you remember this?
yeah, I try and channel my inner Brené Brown and think about my vulnerability and how I can just share that, yeah, and then being brave in those contexts.
Yeah,
Um,
no, I think that's a good strategy. That would be a good strategy for anybody listening out there. Like if you had a pad, a daily pad, or like a daily calendar. And I know ladies are better at doing this journaling and keeping notes than men are. Generally, not. I'm not making a generalization. But yeah, it'd be good. Like if you had, especially in the early days of your recovery and going through that, is you've a pad that would just like, what am I going to do tomorrow? Fill it out the day before for what you need to do, and
yeah.
that's just a really simple strategy.
I
Um,
used to also put, so on that, if we're just going to dig into that for a sec,
yeah,
um, journaling was really therapeutic, and
mhm,
it would
yeah,
often be, like today this really hard thing happened and I don't know why, da 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 da. But then sometimes if I read it a few days later, I'd be like, oh, well, that's because I didn't sleep the night before, or that's
yeah,
because I actually ended up eating gluten by mistake the day before, or like there was all these, I could start to see the pattern.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
neuropsych was amazing. He got me to analyze. He could see that my brain was a little bit analytical, let's just say. And I think and so he got me to analyze every single day, headache level, because we were trying to figure out why I was blacking out all the time. And so, it was part of this gathering data and then trying to find these patterns of what happens for my body in those times. But then the journaling was great for that. The writing down the daily sort of or weekly planner thing was great. But then I used to also have a sticky note in my pocket. So
Right,
on
okay.
that day, whatever was on that day, I would write it on a sticky note first thing in the morning, and I would put it in my pocket of whatever I was wearing. I always had to wear something with pockets.
Yeah.
But then I could pull it out and go, oh yeah. I'm waiting outside my house because there's a taxi coming, because they're going to, an Uber coming, because they're going to take me to the appointment at 11 o'clock with my vestibular optometrist. Oh, okay, that's why I'm standing outside my house right now.
Yeah,
Because I
that's a
couldn't
very
remember,
good strategy. Yeah.
you
I
know?
never considered that
And so
one. That's a good
it
one.
just it's helped me navigate life and remember things,
Yeah.
because otherwise it's just not always. I shouldn't. I'm trying to I'm trying to neurosculpt that. I don't want to say I still always forget things, because I don't. It's not true anymore.
No.
Um, there is my brain remembers less than it would have prior to concussion.
Mhm.
But I've got lots of strategies to help me with that now, and most of the time I'm not double or triple booking things anymore, or anything like
No,
that.
no,
So
I know what you
most of
mean.
the time it's probably not obvious to other people anymore in ways that it would have been early on.
No,
Me
no,
forget.
no, of course not. And sorry, it's a bit of a dark tangent, but you put me in mind of that film Memento. Was it Guy Pearce? Where he's like, he had amnesia, and then he's writing stuff all over his body to in order to try and remember stuff. And oh yeah, that was a weird one. But yeah, hopefully we don't need to do that.
Well,
Um,
actually, this is really interesting, you saying this, because I watched that
mm,
movie before I got concussed.
right, okay.
So this is it, right? So I have things from before I got concussed that I don't remember. Like, I know I've watched that movie,
Yeah,
and once you start talking about some details, little bits and snippets come back. But if it's a movie that I've watched in the last
yeah,
2 years, I can tell you every single thing about it. I can tell you the actors that were in it, the different scenes, my memory
yeah,
has
that's
come
good.
back.
Yeah.
Um, but it's really interesting. There are still pockets of pre-concussion that I don't remember. Um,
Mm.
yeah, and
Yeah.
it's things like a movie that I saw, or something. I'm like, oh, I think I watched that. I think I might have seen it, as opposed to the pre-concussion Saskia would have gone, oh, I remember that movie. Da 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 da.
Yeah, of
Um,
course.
yeah, yeah. So it's just interesting, right? And
Definitely.
I
Yeah,
guess
it is.
this is part of the rediscovering how to drive the 2.0 brain. It's how does it work? What does it remember?
Mhm.
Where are the gaps perhaps?
Yeah,
And
there's
and
plenty of
and
gaps.
what can I do to support that? So how can I recraft or relearn or neurosculpt in that space? Is this something I need to know? I don't know. I need to know everything about Memento. I could go and watch it, but maybe it will be okay if I don't know everything about that movie. Like I'm
Yeah,
over the example here, but you get the gist, right?
yeah, yeah, I do. And you made a good point there because it does heighten your awareness post-injury to really try and remember the things that are crucially important. Um, and then, of course, the stuff that really doesn't matter. Sometimes, a lot of time, people ask me, "Do you know about this, that, and the other?" I'm like, "Well, I probably heard about it at one point in my life, but I really couldn't recite it to you right here and now because I've got better, more important things that I need to remember for myself. And
Yes,
therefore, you can talk to me like I'm totally ignorant and remind me that maybe at some point I'll remember and go, oh yeah, I remember that person or this event or
yes,
whatever.
yeah,
But it does make your brain much more selective in those ways. And
yes,
see, I don't watch any television, I don't read the news or anything like that. But I always have this philosophy, if something's really important, somebody, somewhere, one of my friends, people I love will tell me about it.
I've
And
I've I've done the same. And I said to my husband, right, I'm not going to look at any news stuff anymore. It's just too overwhelming for my brain. And so yeah, I did that a couple of years back now. And I said, if there's something big that happens in the world, can you tell me about it?
yeah,
And then in the weekend, he was like, so there was a thing that happened in Bondi Beach in Australia. It's not nice. Do you want to know about it? Do you have the capacity to discuss this? Is this something that you want to know that happened?
right.
And I said, yes, I do. Like I'm at the moment, I've got lots of energy. I had a good sleep
Mm.
last night. I could run this morning. Yeah. But can you just simplify it for me? You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
so I've still got that sort of, yes, I wanted to know what happened and I care about these people and I want to check in with people that I know that live in those areas. That matters to me. But at the
Yeah.
same time, I need to be careful about what information I'm taking on and how much of it and what's going to serve me. I'm just jumping back before you said about what we remember and how it serves us in that moment almost sort of. And I have this fear, David, that so the last stage I have to do for my to get the full PhD is to do what an oral defense, a viva. And I there will be national and international experts that are in there in
Okay.
the exam with me, and they will ask me questions. I think
Yeah.
I can get to minutes. Sometimes it can be 2 or 3 hours, and they're going to ask me about every element of my PhD, and I'm sort of expected to remember all of it. Well, I
Wow.
only handed in 2 weeks ago, and I can't remember half of it now. So like so that when you're talking about the amnesia and how it does go on and manifest in different ways post concussion.
Yeah.
Um, I was thinking it scared me, and I thought, okay, well, this is a learning opportunity. I need to communicate clearly and transparently with my examiners. So I think I'm going to
Yeah.
say, hey, I had a concussion. At the time, it looked like this. Right now, it looks like this.
Yeah.
Sometimes
Uh-huh.
the amnesia still kicks in, and there might be a time that I need to go and do like, you know, a 1 minute reset where I just do some
Yeah. No,
calming, take
that's
a
what
drink
you
of
need
water,
to do.
some breathing, and come back. And then if you could ask me the question again, I'm probably going to be okay. But there are other times that I might just forget what I've done there, and I'm going to try my best. I promise I wrote it. Like
Yeah. Promise it's there in black and white. Honest.
I'm
Yeah.
going to do my best. So yeah, just a heads up. And I'm hoping that I mean I trust that my supervisors
Of course.
I have
Yeah.
high trust with them. So I trust that they've got examiners who will hopefully understand that.
Yeah.
And that I
Well,
can be open and honest about where I'm at with that and we move and navigate it together. But it is petrifying at
well,
times,
I
not being
bet.
sure.
Yeah. I bet. I couldn't. I don't know if I could be in that situation. But yeah, I'm sure they will do, and they'll have sensitivity to your situation and everything, and say, well, actually, yeah, because it's way more recognised than it was back in the day, and yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
especially with somebody as knowledgeable as yourself, they'd be like, yeah, that's fine. Let's
It's
take five and go back to it.
yeah. Yeah.
Don't see any reason why not.
But see, there's that fear, right? So I've got
Yeah.
better at one of the wonderful things the neuropsych did. He said, how does a human process emotions? And I was like, I don't know. I've forgotten how to do that. I have no clue how I'm supposed to process an emotion. Which
No, no, no. And
I have no idea. All I know is that, on the assessment that he had to do on me, I came out as have highest possible severe depression, highest level possible of stress, and severe anxiety. And I'm like, that's not usually who I am. So, this is
no,
quite
no.
intense, and so then but he was great. He was like, okay, so what happens in the beginning? And he actually talked me through how to process
Mhm.
an emotion.
Yeah,
Sus, you need to so identify how you're feeling.
Yeah.
Where are you experiencing it in your body? Do a check-in, do the
Yeah.
body scan. Where am I feeling it? If that works. If it doesn't, that's okay. But then what is this emotions? What need is this signposting? You
Mm.
know? And so I think it was really helpful for him to lay that out. What need is that signposting? What small action can I take in that direction now? Even if it's writing a note for myself
Yeah.
and tomorrow, whatever it is, or doing some neurosculpting on how I want to think about that in the future. But it's so empowering. But these are the things that, we're relearning. We talked about sort of holistic sort of perspectives on post-concussion
Yeah.
um, recovery. There's physical, mental, emotional,
Mhm.
social, spiritual, if we're thinking about identity, who am I? You know, all of these
Mm.
elements are intertwined with our post-concussion recovery, and all of them matter. And if one of them's really challenged, it impacts all of the others. You
It
know, this is
does.
not a black, white, cause and effect linear
No, no, no.
situation. It's non-linear and it's complex and it's challenging. Yeah. Anyway, tangent again.
No, that's all right. No,
I'm
no
gonna.
problem. We rename this a Post Concussion Tangent podcast. I don't know, well, because we always go off on tangents, but that's where the conversation leads us, and that's where we have to go. That's why I don't script things and write questions, because it's not like an interview or anything. It's two people having
Yeah,
a chat about what they've been through. But
yeah.
yeah, no, you sound like you've got a pretty good handle on things, and yeah, no, that's yeah, that's I respect that.
Mm.
Um, so yeah, I think one of the other things we wanted to talk about was trauma. I know you touched on it
Yeah.
in some what you said before, Saskia, about trauma comes from many different places. For some people, it comes from deep childhood wounds or things where parenting issues or family issues were bad. Other people, it comes from certain life events, catastrophes in the personal life, violence, abuse, all kinds of stuff. And then it all also can get added to for illness, accident, injury, brain injury, and so on. Um, if you think about um, release from trauma, obviously therapy and talking therapy, CBT to some extent, DBT, psychotherapy, and so on. I know quite a few psychotherapists and people probably listen to this, and um,
Mm.
it would all go back to like a common cause, common roots of
Yeah.
trauma.
Yeah.
And I think it's about identifying and recognizing those sources of it and working back to that. Um,
Mm.
Obviously, it could be something as simple as a concussion. Although there could be, you tend to find there's many things that build up unconsciously.
Mm.
What are your thoughts on trauma and dealing with trauma through talking therapies and other means?
Um, I'm a big advocate for us being proactive in supporting our mental health in general.
Yeah.
Um, um, and have worked in those spaces in the past. And so for me, I'm really big on um, ideally, as much as possible, being trauma informed in our spaces. But then
Hmm.
there's also another line of research, stream of research that's coming out more recently, and it's talking about at times some of the strategies that have been developed for trauma informed practice may actually inhibit the individual from healing from said trauma. And so there's a really interesting sort of discussion and discourse in research spaces around that at the
Yeah.
moment or recently. And I think that's really fascinating because, yeah, that question of sort of what, oh, I've lost my stream of thought, like what are we, what are
Yeah.
we looking at so,
Yeah.
in terms of where the trauma is
Trauma
and what we
response. Yeah.
can do. But yeah, also, are we actually ingraining out that trauma? So, for example, I
Yeah.
was talking to my hairdresser the other day, and she was talking about how her daughter had recently, sorry, I was talking to someone the other day. She was talking about how her daughter, she's had mental health challenge, and she had gone and got a tattoo of I think it's a semicolon on her breast. And
Okay.
that is an indication that she is standing proud, and the fact that there's been really tough mental health
Yeah.
in her
Yeah.
um and and she's standing proud in that space, as opposed to being embarrassed, I guess,
Yeah.
about
Cool.
um
Yeah.
and in my brain I'm sort of I'm really big advocacy for mental health. And then at the same time, I find it really fascinating. For me, there's a difference between, for me, it's a permanence or temporal element here.
Yeah.
So when we go um, temporal, we go, this is something I've experienced.
Hmm.
Um, there are many elements of who I am, and this is something I've experienced, but
Yeah.
it's temporal, and I will move through this, and
Yes.
will be other things, light at the
Yeah.
end of the tunnel, whatever you want to see it, but it's it's not, it's just a here and now.
Hmm.
Yeah. And then if we move to sort of more permanent mindsets around this, it goes beyond this is a mental health challenge or crisis that am in and experiencing and living at the moment, to
Yeah.
this is who I am.
Yeah.
And there is a difference, because when
Yeah.
it's this is what I'm experiencing, I mean, it's the same as me saying, um, I am feeling sad and I am sad, right? But just in a different
Exactly.
context, in a
Yeah.
bigger way, but in terms of identity, right? So
Yeah.
I've experienced these things, as opposed to, so it's probably the equivalent in terms of post concussion. It's probably the equivalent to me saying I'm a post concussion survivor.
Hmm.
To post concussion is something that I've experienced in my life,
Yes.
and I've navigated as best I can, but it's just one
Mm.
element of life, and it's just one element of what comprises who I am.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Of course. Yeah. I
You see what
understand.
I'm saying? So for me, when we talk trauma, I think the permanence temporal, yeah, the temporal elements of it are worth considering,
Mm.
because when it's permanent, it's who I am. And there's a sense that I'm not going to heal from that, and that I can't. And if our mindset is in that place, then we probably won't.
Yeah.
If
I
our
agree with that,
and if we're going, this is instead of it's a who I am, it's a what I've experienced, or it changes the narrative and our self
yeah. Yes.
narrative that we're
Yeah.
producing, then living through, and that underpins all our values and our belief
It
structures
does. It does. Yeah.
moving forward, right? So
Yeah.
that would be um my 2 cents on sort of trauma. Yeah, I mean, I could go on
No,
about
thank you
trauma
for
for
that.
days. So there we go. That's my that's my
Yeah. No, thank you for that. Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. And ideally, I think, well, if if you have to reprogram your mind and your beliefs, I use affirmations a lot, and that way to try to recover from that. It's the affirmation that although I've experienced something, I've been through this event in my life or these events in my life, they shouldn't define me in the present or going forwards. And that is one I think is one of the most difficult things to kind of persuade and to show anybody that's um, still in the rough of dealing with the traumas that you've got.
Mhm.
You used to find these strategies, these ways to go forwards and go, well, actually, I can reprogram my mind. I
Mm,
can use certain things naturally. I can use NLP. I can use whatever
mm,
therapy. I can use
mm,
affirmations. Like lion's mane mushrooms and things are good for the brain.
mm,
Medicinal mushrooms and so on, very good for helping to regrow synapses.
mm.
And I think, yeah, a lot of that gets lost on modern healthcare, as we've discussed before. And
I think
yeah,
there's I think there's a big place for gratitude. And you're talking about
yeah,
sort of when
gratitude, yeah,
you're in the pit, when you're in the deepest, darkest
yeah.
part of the tunnel, let's say.
Mm.
Um, as opposed to that being the only place,
Yes.
Um, for me, gratitude's massive,
Mm.
and we can think about the neuroscience behind this as well,
Mm.
literally we can see brains changing with the amount of gratitude that's practiced. And not only that, it's a positive emotion that we can choose to experience. I'm going to experience gratitude in 3 seconds time. I'm grateful for my life. I'm grateful for my husband, right? Okay, so and that leads into or builds on what we talked about before in terms of I influence my life. I'm in charge of my boat. I steer my boat. I have a boat and I can influence the things in it or control the things in it. And then
Mm.
it also, I think there's also comes back to this sort of temporal element where we go, okay, it's just one day at a time.
Yes. Yeah.
Just one day at a time. And sometimes in those dark places, it's just one day at a time, or tomorrow will be better.
Yeah.
Or even if it's not tomorrow will be better, this afternoon will be better. Or
Yeah, of course.
five
Yeah.
minutes time will be better because I'm gonna go and make my favorite cup of tea and I'm gonna sit down with that.
Yeah. I'm going to enjoy the moment and my
Yeah.
surroundings and my
Not
family, whatever,
yeah.
and get on with
Those
it.
mi those micro moments. And actually, I think for me, one of the biggest things was celebrating, and we try and do lots of this in our post concussion living Facebook group. It's celebrating those micro moments of success.
Yeah.
So if we can go, oh wow, today I walked to the letterbox for the first time.
Yeah.
You know, if someone posts that in our group, all the rest of us are like, yeah, we're popping corks. We're, like we're
Yeah.
shaking, we've got
Yeah. Yeah.
pom-poms. We are
It's an
so
achievement.
excited for them
Yeah.
because we remember what that was like, you
Yeah,
know?
it's that
Yeah,
cognitive sense of somebody else's achievement because at some
yeah,
point you've probably been through something very similar where you couldn't get to the end of the street. I know that.
yeah, yeah.
PCS and fibromyalgia and physical injury and stuff where my back's gone and that. And I'm like, well, today
Mm.
I'll just try to make it close back to the end of my street or wherever, or I'll just try and make it down to the shops or wherever. And then
Yeah.
it's like,
And
well,
then
at least I've
and
done
then
that.
from the yes, and then from the I will try, it's I did it.
Yeah.
And that's where the sort of
Yeah, the
neurosculpting
gratitude,
that
you
comes
know.
in, right? Like, I want to try this. I did this. I can change how I think about this now
Yeah,
because I did
yeah,
that. There
exactly.
is proof now. And next time I'm
Mm.
going to go further. I'm going to do something else. And then that it creates a new neural pathway that becomes the new motorway as
Yeah,
opposed to,
very true.
just, as opposed to just a back road, right? We have to choose.
Yes, yeah,
We
yeah.
can we can make choices about how we're thinking about it, so that
Well,
becomes the stream that we head to, right?
of
And
course,
that,
and that's entirely how the brain works. If you have a trodden pathway, um, uh, somebody explained it to me recently as like imagine a big cornfield or a wheat field where you live, and if you're just going like to an area which is a bit darkness or depression or whatever, and that becomes a well-trodden path. But then if you decide to tread a path in another direction, obviously it's going to take a lot longer for those corn stalks or wheat stalks to flatten down to make a new path. But that's
yes,
entirely how the brain works. And so
yes,
they say it takes 30 days to totally retrain the brain into a different pathway. I think that's based on good neurological scientific research. And that was the same way we're talking about brain injury or recovery from addiction or whatever. It does take some time and you have to stick at it and beast yourself into doing it. But I think in a good way.
yeah, yes,
Mm.
definitely. I think at one stage I made it like a sticker chart for myself, like my 5-year-old sticker
Yeah.
chart for putting his lunchbox in his bag or whatever, and I had a sticker chart for I'm going to
Yeah.
walk the extra 5 minutes today, and so
Yeah.
or
Awesome.
but those little successes, if we can stop and really give ourselves massive kudos for that,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
it was so hard to get to the letterbox that day, and we did it for the first time, and it represents so much. So I think when we start to really get into a mindset where we're appreciating those micro moments in terms of the gratitude, but then we're also trying to, identify those small successes and those wins and celebrate them in and of ourselves and
Mhm.
recraft how we're going to think about these things in the future, but also celebrating them with others, because then it's
Yeah.
enhanced in our sense of who I am and where I'm going, right? So if I
Yeah.
tell you that I did this as well, you celebrate with me and I go, yeah, he said that I did it
Yeah.
too. Right. So I must, so that the cornfield, the path in the cornfield widens,
Yeah,
right?
that's right. Yeah.
All of those interactions, because we start to pave these new pathways for how we want to be. I think actually that every now and then,
Mhm.
David, I am incredibly grateful for being concussed, because
Yeah. Yeah. Same
I get
here.
to a
Yeah.
because
Absolutely.
I have had this opportunity to recraft my brain in a new way.
Yeah.
And at times it feels like I'm trying to figure out how to drive the new car, and I'm not quite sure how
Yeah.
to do it. And the indicators are on the wrong side, and I don't know how this works. Um, but there are other times where I go, wow, what an incredible opportunity I've had to recraft who I want to be and how I want to be. And I'm not saying I'm there. I don't think there is a I'm there,
No,
but
there
I'm
is
on the
no there. Yeah.
pathway, and I'm really grateful that I've had this experience. Yeah.
Yeah, and it is a gratitude as well. And I think this is something that, yeah, outside of what we've been through, um, it's hard for people to understand to an extent. But yeah, you have to realize that it becomes. We talked about this a lot in the past in the podcast and through the groups of like when you have PCS, when you have a brain injury, then you go through a grieving period of losing your old self, and then that new self comes forward, who you would like to be when you're going through the recovery into the next space. That your interests, your abilities, your perceptions, everything changes and shifts. And then you have to form a bridge between the old self and the new self. And we
Yes.
buy certain names for this, but yeah, it is. Then you have to give that gratitude for, well, okay, I know I'm never going to be the same person I was again a year ago, 2 years ago,
Mm,
5 years ago. But this is the most
mm.
important thing, especially if anybody's listening to this and they have recently experienced a concussion and not recovered, is that, well, actually, don't don't try to dwell too much on regaining the old self because it's like shedding your skin in a fashion. It's like shedding
Yeah.
your brain skin. It's like shedding it to a fashion. You become a bit chameleonic. You've kind of try to focus on new ways to reforge your life. And that's always
Yeah.
been what we've practiced and what we preached is like, and that's anybody that comes into the groups or contacts me and they're like, well, you can't go back to what you were. You're going to have to let that old self die to an extent, but not fully. But you're going to have to take up your new self and go forwards and grieve in your own time and then get on with things a different way.
Yeah. Oh, definitely. And I really love that you've talked about that grief process as well. I think for
Yeah,
me that is quite
God.
an epiphany, and we often discuss this in our post-concussion living group.
Mm.
There are some people, like you're talking about, really in those early stages. I got concussed last week. How can I heal myself within a month?
Oh,
Um,
yeah.
I'll, and so in those early stages of shock and denial, and anger, there's a lot of challenge in there.
Oh,
And
yeah,
so
for sure.
and
Yeah.
holding that space in that post-concussion community, we're trying to go, okay, it's okay to be in denial right now. It's okay to be really angry. It's okay to be in a place where you're bargaining, or if it's really dark and there's depression.
Yeah.
Or are you in the place where you're starting to test things in that upward turn, or are you reconstructing, or have you got to a place, like I think most days now when I'm in a place of acceptance and hope. It's a different place in that grief process, and I'm very grateful to have got here. But it was a roller coaster of those very tough, hard, emotional, psychological, sort of neurological turmoil to get there.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's like the Big Dipper of Big Dippers. And yeah, I don't think I've really met anybody that's been through it that hasn't had their whole life turned upside down and changed. In the short term, sometimes for the worse, and through loss of income, loss of a job, loss of a family member, loss of whatever they've lost as a result of whatever didn't then fit into their recovery and their life going forwards. But once
Mhm.
people do understand that, yeah, it's not the end of your life, it's not terminal, it's just something that's very complex that you've got to get to grips with. And I think that's how most people found us in the groups in the first place, was because they just got into a place of in the five stages of grief is like what is it oh, I can't remember exactly off the top of my head, but one's anger, denial, depression, bargaining, and acceptance, or not, maybe not in that order, but a lot of people go through the denial stage first, and it obviously switches around with grief, as you know.
You can
Then
jump
it's
back and
like,
forth between
yeah,
any stage at
yeah,
the
of
same time.
course, yeah, yeah. And the depression stage, that's you looking for help and it's not there. And then the anger stage is why me? Why did this happen to me? It was an accident and it wasn't my fault, and so on. And it's the same,
I
like,
think I think that was massive for me. Like, can I just talk to that anger for a sec? Is that all right?
yeah, of course,
So, because it was my beautiful, precious 4-year-old son
yeah, bless him,
who's who's in his joy to see me first thing in the morning caused my concussion.
yeah, bless him.
That anger, it wasn't a drunk driver that whacked into me, you
No,
know. So there's this sort of, oh, who am I blaming for this, you know? And I've had the last, oh gosh, 15 years, 15 years ago, I trained in restorative practice. And
mm,
so for me, that's been quite helpful in sort of making sense and understanding this and as a process as well.
yeah,
So I I I talked to my husband about this and I said, I really want to get to a place. I need to get to a place. Like at the moment, I'm angry that this happened. And I'm
yeah.
angry when he comes and like jumps on me on the couch or something because he wants a cuddle, but you know, he might hit my head again, you know? So,
Wear
you
a
know, I'm
crash
like,
helmet.
oh,
You can
don't
wear
hit
a
me
crash
again,
helmet.
you
Sorry.
know? Yeah.
Oh,
So
dear.
it's just, you know, like it's this, it initially there was that anger there, but because it was my child, I felt like I had to forgive quite quickly and quite in
God.
order to move through because I
Oh,
have to live with him. I can't
yeah.
wake up being angry with my child,
No,
you know.
and as a mother,
And so
your love for your child is unconditional as a parent, isn't it? So
right, right.
you're
So
not
it was
going
this
to blame them.
the anger thing. I understood like different people obviously whatever caused their concussion, it's a really tricky place to it's a tricky thing to navigate in any way, but trying to work through the anger of why this happened to me or how it happened is really challenging. But in restorative practice, we talk about how it happened, how we feel, and how we fix.
Yes.
You know, and so for me, I had to work really hard at restoring a positive relationship with my son.
Yeah.
And I and my husband and I worked really hard to make sure that it was blame free, shame free.
Of course.
So
Yeah.
no
Beautiful.
time that I've seen you hit me in the head. You know,
No.
even now and then, now that they're a bit older, the 11-year-old does remind the 9-year-old, well, don't do that. You remember last time you concussed mum
Oh God, no.
when he's
Oh,
being a cheeky older
dear.
sibling.
Oh
But
no.
most, I would
Yeah.
say, I would like to,
Fair.
I hope that, you know, one day when if my youngest is ever in counselling, that it doesn't come up as a major, you know, trauma. I'd like to
No, for
hope
him, no. Oh
actually,
God, no.
exactly. I would like to hope we've tried so hard to put as many different things in place as possible so that there's just the forgiveness and love around
Well,
it.
yeah,
You know,
you could possibly rephrase it, like if it does come up from say, well, actually, when you unintentionally headbutted mum all those years ago, it actually altered the course of her life and set her free in a path to discover some things you'd never even considered dealing with, and
exactly,
it's made her
exactly.
a
Yeah,
person.
yeah,
Yeah, no,
yeah.
you have to
So
frame it the
that's
right
sort of
way. Yeah,
yeah.
like you say, the
It's
gratitude
the,
thing comes in, and you could turn to him if one day and say, "Well, I'm actually grateful that happened in a way."
I
And
have. I've
yeah,
already
that's
said that
good.
to him. I'm so grateful
Yeah,
that this happened
that's
because
beautiful.
it's changed things. There are days where it doesn't feel a silver lining, but most of the time I
No,
can see I can see the positives. And I'm in this wee sort of limbo place. I've got offered this position for next year, but I haven't signed the contract, so
Yeah.
in time. But I can already see how much it's changed me, and I can't go back to that new version. So what, I'm in full acceptance of that. So I have to move forward. You sort of get to that
Yeah.
place.
Well, it sounds like you have a wonderful family, and that's one thing to give gratitude for. And is they say, well, you've got their love and support. That is amazing. That is something that is truly wonderful. Um, yeah. So, given that all we've talked about, we've been talking for quite a while, and thank you again for being so gracious with your time. Um, is there anything else you'd like to say to the people listening at home? Obviously, some of them will have just found the podcast and just be going through this.
Mm.
Is there anything you'd like to say in general? Firstly, to the people are newly experiencing post-concussion issues, and then maybe to those who've been on the path a little bit further, please.
Yeah, sure. Um, I'm just, I'm literally just, I can tell you, I'm writing down early issues and people that have been on the journey further. I'm just writing down these things so I can
No,
actually
no,
talk
that's
through
good. You know,
it.
yeah, get it
This
all
is,
down.
I have
Get
the
it all
new
down.
strategy. I can tell you that. Most of the time I don't.
No,
Um,
good.
no, for those people that are sort of in these really early stages,
Mhm.
we've talked about the one day at a time. We've
Yeah.
talked about what is it that is in your boat, you
Mm.
know, and
Yeah.
celebrating any tiny, minute win, ideally with other people.
Yeah.
Giving
Oh,
yourself grace,
oh,
it's going to be really hard. I feel like I've self-compassion has been something that I wasn't big on, or
mm.
I wouldn't say it was a strength of mine before this. I was pretty hard on myself.
Right.
Um, Something that we learn because we have to through this process. So if we can be gentle with ourselves and
Yeah.
kind to ourselves, I think that's massive. Um, and hold on to that hope. You are in a tunnel and there is light at the end. Like this is temporal. This too shall pass. It's not a forever. Well, this
Mm.
state of being is not a forever.
No.
Um, Moments of it affecting our lives long term, potentially, but it's not a forever. This right now, how we're feeling, is not a forever. It's just a
No.
now.
No.
Um, and tomorrow will look different, and next week will look different, and it is a roller coaster, so it might be tougher or it might be easier, but the
Mm.
long term trajectory,
Mhm.
hold on to that hope. There is light there. For people that are further along, I have learnt so much from other people that were further on in this journey,
Yeah.
um, that really voiced the honest truth.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
this is what I have experienced in the past. This is how tough it
Yeah.
was.
The hard truth.
The reality of my situation. Yeah, but then also these are the strategies that worked for me. And I mean, from
Mm.
my, I talked about my research before and how, a strategy that might be the most important for one person and make the biggest difference will literally make the least difference for someone else. We are all completely unique. So there's this
Mm.
really tough, there's no silver bullet. There's no one size fits all.
No.
This is us having to navigate and trial and error and play with this. But people that are further along, the more that you can share and really raise awareness of what's happening through
Mhm.
being vulnerable and
Yeah.
being honest, open and brave and uncomfortable conversations. The amount of people that have said to me, "Oh, that happened to you. Can I ask a question? I've always
Mm.
wondered."
Mhm.
Like the more times that we can answer that question in an open and honest way, the more we elevate awareness and we heighten awareness around what post-concussion symptoms are, what post-concussion living can look like,
Yeah.
and how we can support each other in local but also wider community.
Yeah. Internationally, yeah. Yeah, no, thank you for your positivity. It's been it's like a breath of fresh air as well, especially the way you've done that. I mean, it doesn't matter where people listen at home, it doesn't matter whether you've had one life-changing concussion or five or 10 or 15 or 20. I know people I've just been through so many sports people and so on as well. But
Mm,
it
mm,
is that positivity that, well, not just thinking positive, because that's not just the key to it. It's it's taking positive action.
yeah,
If leave with one thing is like you can think positive all you want all day long. If you don't do and you're not capable and you're not in a place to be able to take positive actions, then you need to get some help and support in order to get to that place. And going on
definitely.
from there, yeah, physically in terms of diet, health, mental health,
Mm,
psychologically, spiritually as well.
mm,
Yeah, just reach out because there are always people that are there that are going to be
mm,
able. There's always going to be somebody there, and you often meet them in the most unlikely places. Not
yeah.
from complete strangers, of complete, and then all of a sudden you'll strike up a conversation with somebody and be like, "Well, oh, I had that years ago, but I never thought anything about it. But this is how I dealt with it." And then all of a
Mm,
sudden, that person
mm,
takes up some significance in your life, and then you get to know them and so on. And
mm.
that's just what this podcast is about, really. There's- there- well, I don't think there's anybody on the podcast that no, there's nobody I've met physically yet, but it's episode 64.
One day it'll happen,
I know, yeah.
David.
No, I've been invited to America and all kinds of places, but I've not been able to travel
Come
and
to New
go. And
Zealand.
no, I know. In future, I think, yeah, maybe that can happen.
Mm.
But
But you're absolutely right. It's beyond the toxic positivity. It's about
yeah, it's
taking
realistic.
ownership of our lives, the agency. It's about
Yeah,
choosing
yeah,
how we be, who we want to be, as
yeah,
opposed to that sort of Pollyanna effect, and
yeah.
maybe faking it, let's just say. But there's one more thing that
Go
you
on,
just, do you mind?
go on.
Um,
No, go on. I
you
don't
just
mind at all.
pointed it. I think for people that are on early on with this challenge, these challenges, but also people that are further on,
Yeah,
um, find your tribe.
yeah,
Find, seek the people that will try and understand you, even if they haven't been through it, but then also, and really value them. And my OT explained staying away from people that don't. I
yeah,
have a person in my life that told me that I was imagining it. It doesn't
yeah,
exist. I was imagining it because I was attention seeking.
yeah.
And so that person I chose not to spend a lot of time with,
Oh, yeah,
with
no,
healing
likewise.
because that just didn't help with my healing. So find
No.
your tribe, seek your people, and ideally join a post-concussion community. Like there's other people out there who get this and who have been through this, and we are really keen to give back because we know how hard it is in those early days. So if you're further along, please come and join and help us advocate, but if you're early on, find your people, find your community, and put your attention where you want to be. Mm.
Absolutely. That is one of the best strategies you're going to get.
Mm.
And same for me. I'd not only I'd medical gaslighting from doctors, nurses, and medical so-called medical professionals. Like, no, ain't nothing wrong with you. You're just making it up. And I actually had it from family members and so-called friends. I was like,
Yeah.
well,
Yeah.
there's
Yeah.
nothing wrong with you. I was like, you were attention seeking, this, that, and the other. I'm like, no, I'm really going through this.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
unfortunately, sometimes you have to part ways with people. Sometimes not always permanently, but sometimes for a period of time. Sometimes
Yeah.
months or years where and then some may come back to you and go, "Well, how are you doing?" And I'm like, "Well, I'm struggling, and it's maybe got more difficult." And they're like, "Well, oh, okay, And then you can have a conversation again. But yeah, it is tough for sure because it's invisible illness, invisible disability, hidden disability, whatever you want to call it, and it's chronic, and it
Mm.
comes back always, always, always to that same. And I have this conversation almost daily with people: is you don't look sick to me. And it's an unexpressed or an expressed opinion that people give you when they're like, how are you doing? You look really well. You look absolutely fantastic. You look great. I'm like, yeah. And then, you get into that territory where it's like, well, do I carry on this conversation or do I just go, yeah, I'm fine? So it's like a double bind because you can't
Mm,
really win with a lot of people. If you
no.
say,
But
yeah,
I
I'm
think
okay,
in lot
yeah,
in the post-concussion like living group and other I'm sure other groups that you're in and that you're part of, that is a place that you can give that honest answer and be vulnerable. And sometimes you can't in those social
no,
situations, you
true.
know,
Yeah.
you.
Yeah,
Mm.
I was thinking more in terms of day-to-day people that you meet in your day-to-day life. But
Yeah,
then, yeah, when
yeah.
it's people you don't see personally, then it's obviously in that uh, retrospect it's easier. But yeah, when it's
Mm.
thinking like family and old colleagues and people you've known, it can be a bit tough because like they look at you and they're like, nah, he looks fine. He seems quite happy and normal, or she seems like quite happy and normal and that, and they're like, well, I don't really believe you. And it
I
is,
know,
it,
and most of the time I think I would just look normal, right? And people would do exactly that with me. And then every now and then, if I was really tired, my eyes literally go outwards, would go outwards
yeah, yeah,
sideways.
yeah.
And they'd be like, Sus, there's something really wrong with your eyes.
Right.
And it would scare them so much.
Yeah,
Because the
yeah.
rest of the time it's,
Oh,
this invisible thing. And I'm like, no, it is a
no,
thing. Yeah.
well,
I'm not going
that's
to be
it.
able to drive after this, so it's a good thing, blah, 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 it's taking me home.
Exactly. And somebody said to me recently with what you call hidden disability or invisible illness, they're all always outward signs. It's just that they're so hard to detect for most people that they can't recognize them. So you do give these signs and people just think overlook it or think, well, oh, well, I don't know, whatever they're going through, look a bit wacky. Or like with aphasia, me, people often think like, well, like he's not talking loudly enough, or his words aren't coming out right, this, that, and the other. And it's like, well, yeah, but if you'd been through it, you'd understand, but you can't go through it, and I wouldn't wish anyone else to go through that. So yeah, it's a tough one for sure. Yeah,
Yeah.
right.
Oh, well, thank you so much for your
No, no,
time and holding
no,
this
no, thank
space,
you for your
David.
time, more importantly. And yeah, we've been talking for quite a while. I really firmly believe a lot of people will actually truly enjoy this podcast and will get a lot out of it. Um, for anybody that's listening up there, it's on Spotify, iTunes, Audible, and there's about 12 other sites that it's on. I'll put the audio version on YouTube as well. And then for the people that complain that the podcasts are often too long, well, I say, well, there's this thing called the pause button. Because I've done plenty of podcasts in the past, like 2 hours and 2 hours and above, and like, oh, it's too long. Well, like, you can pause it and carry on listening later, don't you? So anyway, no, it's just my joke there for those people. So thank you most of all, Suskya Goodall from New Zealand. It's been a pleasure to have you on, and thank you for being so generous with your time. If you have any links or information you want to add to the footnotes of the podcast, please send them to me. I'll put this up in the next day or so. I don't know if you have any social media links or not, but if you
You
do,
can find me, yeah, on LinkedIn. I'm
LinkedIn.
Suskya Goodall.
Oh, there we
Yeah,
go. Awesome.
that
Right.
weird.
So,
But
yeah.
and then the
So
Facebook group is Post Concussion Living. So that's it's all. Yeah.
in New Zealand.
On
Awesome. Right. So, thank you very much for listening. And I hope you'll join us again. I'm not sure we've got on next. There's a couple of people who've said they're going to come on soon. I think from the States. So, yeah. And if you're listening to this in now in lifetime, happy festive holidays, Christmas, Kwanzaa, Yule, whatever you want to call it, because we're recording this on the 18th of December. So it's only a week away. So we wish you a happy festive season wherever you are, whatever you believe or celebrate. And we will see you again in 2026, which is the year of the horse. Come on. So yeah, the year of the snake is nearly done. The year of the horse, which is probably going to be a bit more positive. We hope in this mad day and age. So from both of us, thanks and goodbye for now.